Hey, we are live again. Today is Friday, the 9th of February 2018. And on the panel so far, we have Yudi Israel, we have Lev Kung Fu from the UK, and special guest is Mr. Thrive and Survive, and he's from America. Good evening.
Hey. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How you doing?
So, yet again, Rich, been watching. You've been very busy doing your posts, and you're going to do a Saturday night with Thrive.
Yeah, Saturday Night Thrive. We're going to start it next Saturday, and just catch up with some of the best I've seen with not only the news, but flat earth things, different things like that. Usually during the week, there's usually one or two excellent contributions that someone has made, and what I find is a lot of them just are not famous people for the most part, but there's a lot of people doing good work that hasn't been really noticed by a lot of people. So I'd like to start spotlighting those. And also some of my other interests are of course, what's going on with QAnon, and also alternative histories, telling the truth, what really caused different wars and different things like that. So I plan on covering all that and more every Saturday night, and have some good guests. I've got a person who, I'm not sure if it's going to be next Saturday, probably the Saturday after, or sometime, who is into alternative medicine, hidden technologies there. She's going to talk about something called silver ozone and a few other things, and what nanoparticles are doing and how they're activated in us, and how inoculations, for example, that I had.
You mean from the chemtrails?
Not just from chemtrails, but also from soft drinks. Certain companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they put, and Nestle, in their products, they put nanoparticles that are activated by microwave radiation once they're in the body. And the microwave radiation is something as simple as your cell phone or at-home Wi-Fi, whatever. So these are things that end up activating things that cause a lot of the debilitating diseases we have, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and a bunch of other diseases. And she's going to talk about how to combat that, get rid of it, and how to avoid re-exposing yourself to it. So that's one good thing there. I've also got somebody lined up at some point. I talked about this a long time ago. I have a person who has access to the Hubble Telescope Control Center in Maryland, and he has gone in there and verified that nothing is live. Everything is programmed a year in advance. And if you want to look at a certain star cluster or whatever, supposedly for a scientist, they have to say, okay, I want to look at this. And they give them a date like 13, 14 months out, so that when they come in, they just hand them photos or whatever, say, here it is. So they never actually look through the telescope or get to see it live or anything like that. So he's going to verify that stuff too.
That's not good then, is it?
No. So it's going to be stuff like that. Hopefully some other people will start coming on for guests, but we'll start it up and see how it goes.
And what did you think of the lovely car in space this week?
I'm sorry, the lovely what?
Car in space, the Tesla car.
Isn't that funny? It's out there. He admits it's just a regular car. He's even got a little Hot Wheels car on the dashboard, and it's up in the thermosphere. So since it's just a regular car and there is no way to take the heat off of it, how are these things not melted?
Yeah, or the tires burst.
Yeah, it all looks perfect, except for I'm sure everybody noticed how fake it was. Let me clear something off.
The funniest thing I saw, Rich, it was on Facebook a lot. Somebody did one of those GIF things, and they had the boy on the Never-Ending Story dog flying past the car.
Yeah,
because it's all fiction, isn't it?
Yes.
Never-ending story.
And did you see how Elon Musk said, it's real because it looks so fake? And boy, did it look fake. Isn't it funny how it's one Earth, but NASA has a different view of it? Looks totally different depending on if it's a SpaceX object up there or if it's NASA. I don't know if, and my understanding is they had to re-upload their stuff because they got caught faking things. I want to share something here. I don't know if anyone has seen this. I've cleared the link, so no worries there.
Rich,
get this up here.
You show
No,
the
I'm
link.
not. No,
You
the link's
are.
not here.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not there.
you're right. Whew. I can just see myself. There you go.
All right. Here is the typical, round Earth. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you noticed it, but the Earth got really small. They must be way out there because you'd almost see the whole thing. But anyway, here you have it where it's the typical curve of the Earth. And then a few seconds later in their video, it turns into this. So which one is it? And there's even a convex part of it as well. So they're not fooling anybody with that. They can't even get
I
that
went
straight.
to one of those live feeds. There was something like there was thousands and thousands of people watching this, going, "Whoa,
Oh,
whoa!"
I know. I kept thinking, boy, the sheeple are just so unbelievably fooled. Cheering it on like it's a football game.
Believing it—that's the sad thing.
Yes.
But they
Just like
do that,
cancer.
don't they? Somebody mentioned last night to mention the the one when he jumped out of that thing and came down. What's that? Red Bull. That the Earth was really small. There was no seas or oceans. There was just a bit of land.
Yes. It's also fake. They haven't had time to perfect it more like NASA. NASA we can tell is fake. So this SpaceX stuff is even worse. And I can't wait to see what all this guy's involved in, the SpaceX guy, Elon Musk. But what you read to me before we came live, that was interesting.
Yes, I shall send that to you afterwards. Don't you worry, just to see what that's about. You'll probably say it's fake. It's so real. It's fake.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said it looks so fake, it's real.
Oh.
Which I've never heard that argument before. If it looks fake, it must be real.
Yeah, right. No, it's fake.
Yeah, if I see a cartoon, it doesn't look like real people, I think I can tell that it's not real people.
Well, did they actually explain what happened to this guy in the car? Did they go and pick him up? Did they leave him? Is he still out there in the car?
But it's a fake person. It's not a real person.
Oh, God.
But the hood is up, so it's all exposed. Like, that's what I mean. It's all exposed to supposedly, hundreds of degrees Celsius, and yet the plastic on the helmet and all that stuff is no problem. And the Hot Wheels car, which is made out of tin or whatever it is, that's not melted. It should be. But
They're saying it's got the engine in the car as well.
Who in the hell would put a literal car into space? Or could?
If that was the case, we could all go up to space then, couldn't we?
Yeah,
exactly.
Sorry, Lev, you're just a little bit breaking up there.
They say it cost $1 million to send a stamp up into space. It might be old, that information, but to send a car up into space, that must cost a fortune, And all the others just go along with it, and they don't seem to mind that cost.
How does it maintain? How does it maintain orbit also? And keep up with the Earth traveling at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour to keep up with the sun.
I think it's just amazing that everything is always in slightly like slow motion, as if it's all really slow. But they're doing 18,000 miles an hour.
Well, think about what they're doing. They're showing something so ridiculous, a car floating in space, that it's almost like the opposite effect. If it's that ridiculous, it must be real. It's just crazy. It's just beyond. It's beyond even comprehending how you could have a car up there, and it's not even tumbling or anything. It's in perfect drift by the camera above the Earth. It's just nuts.
Yeah, but we know what that is. It's got a green screen behind it.
Yes, or very good layering with software. Not as good as NASA's, though. Oh, and I have to go back and get it. There was a bubble that went by at one point.
Oh, what? So they were in a swimming pool then?
Probably, yeah. I got to go back and verify, but I'm 99% sure it was a bubble.
Oh. We just want it all to stop, don't we? The lies. Just want it to stop. It's just ridiculous and stupid.
Yeah, And I've heard some people comment recently that there's a divide that we probably won't be able to breach with a lot of people. The people are so far gone on one side or the other that you're never going to get them back. And that's unfortunate, but I think that's just the way it is. And as truth is going to be revealed here, as it is being revealed now, these people are going to literally lose their minds. So we're going to have some issues there with people actually going nuts.
I don't think people care. I don't think people care. It just goes in one ear and out the other. And then they're able to carry on doing this again and again and again.
Yeah, bread and circuses, as long as they're giving it entertainment and food, they're all good.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've done that one. Fake. Stamp on it. Dunk. Fake. Yeah. So do you want to explain? I mean, obviously, many people in this chat room are probably watching everything you do, but do you want to explain what you've been doing this week, apart from Thrive Saturday night?
Yeah, nursing a migraine for 4 days, mostly. But when I can, I've kept up with the QAnon posts the best I could. And not a lot going on there, except for supposedly there has been one big arrest that happened in Shanghai, China. And that was 2 days ago. In fact, it was QAnon was posting live pictures from Shanghai. And they were following a Mercedes. And the comment was the last person for the meeting has arrived. And then they showed a picture of the building. I can't remember the name of the building, but it's a famous building, King's Tower, I think it's called, in Shanghai. And one of the windows was open, and it said, "Pay attention to the powder," or to the substance. It looked like a powder around the window. And QAnon said that was because of to release the pressure from a blast in that room. I don't know what that's all about. We also had at the State of the Union address, there was pictures that came from QAnon where there was 3 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and the first member on the right had a phone in her hand. It was an iPhone. She was playing Candy Crush during the speech. And then there was someone on the left who was on Twitter, but the middle person, evidently, she said, was saying that Trump needs to be shot. Now, I don't know if she said that actually on her phone, but you could see the 3 phones there. But there was also an audio that came out where she was yelling when Trump came in, "Don't clap, he needs to be shot," is what it sounds like she said anyway. Right. So I think that anybody that doesn't think the deep state is feeling it is in denial. You just don't have this stuff in typical times. I'd have to go back, like I said, when you're having migraines, it's hard to put 2 thoughts together, but there's a lot of stuff that I'll probably put on the Saturday recap with what's going on. There's been a lot of tie-ins and connections. There's connections now all the way up to Obama and Hillary and a bunch of others with treason and with real collusion with the Russians. And the real plan for trying to take out Trump after he won the election is starting to come out slowly but surely. So it's interesting times that we're living in.
Yeah, it's a bit strange it's taken so long to come out about that then, about Trump then, like months later, a couple of months later. I suppose that's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they want to cause any kind of confusion just to keep it away from what's really happening. Yes.
There was a lot of tie-in this week to the British spy, Christopher Steele. There was a second memo that was released. This is by the Senate. Senator Grassley and Graham, I think, released a memo, and it had all to do with Christopher Steele, who put together this fake Russian dossier. He was working with James Comey at the FBI and the CIA. They're all involved. They were all involved in the Clinton campaign, and John Podesta and Obama. They were all doing this from the day he got elected on, and before he got elected. But he focused, it was kind of weird, he was focusing on Christopher Steele a lot. And I think the reason is once they investigate him, that will lead them to all the other stuff. And they were able to release that memo without having it being too politically charged, because they're going after a British citizen in that case. But I think all that is on purpose to lead back to show all the coup d'etat actors that's been going on for a long time. In fact, that fake dossier that was put together by Christopher Steele, that even during Trump's first year, he was inaugurated on January 20th. They were still, as of April at least, maybe even as far as June or July, they were still spying on Trump after he became president. It was all illegal. So all this stuff is building up to probably now the 13,600 indictments is what all these things are leading up to.
Pardon? How many?
13,600 now. Sealed indictments around the country. And two of them were unsealed. One of them had to do with Uranium One. That told me they were definitely investigating Clinton under Uranium One, because they can't charge him if they don't go all the way to the top with that. So I'm convinced she's actually indicted with that, and that's sealed. She's also under investigation with an Arkansas grand jury. They're looking at it, and there's 3 at least other investigations that are before a grand jury right now for her. So I don't know what the timing is or whatever, but it's, in fact, my deadline date was February 5th, where I said I would stop talking about Q if there wasn't arrest. And what was interesting was on February 5th, which I uploaded actually on the 4th, my video, which I was glad I did because I had that migraine coming. But on the 5th itself, QAnon posted, why are you not seeing arrests happening right now? And it explained why. And part of the reason is that they need to build righteous indignation up with the people, so that when these arrests do happen, the people are actually behind the government arresting these people, instead of having, without the righteous indignation, you'd have all these idiots in the street fighting it, thinking that it was just a politically motivated type of thing, which is that's the game they're talking right now, that it's just, if there's any arrest, it's Trump becoming a dictator and getting rid of his political opponents. So these people are not his political opponents. He defeated Hillary Clinton, and all the rest of the people aren't politicians. So I don't know what they're going at.
Is any of this going out in the press then, Rich? Is any of this in the press? Is any of this in the press in America?
On Fox News it is. Sean Hannity and what's her name? Linda Carter, I think is her name. She's a very good investigative reporter. Believe it or not, they're getting it behind everybody else. They're a few days behind, but they are at least reporting it, what's going on. So yeah, it's actually getting in the press. The other mainstream CIA networks aren't even touching it, but they're going to have to touch it soon, because it's the reality of what's going on is going to dictate that they're going to have to speak to it.
Isn't it crazy? They sit there month after month making fake news, fake wars and all that, and can't wait to shove it down our throat. And when there's some actual real things happening, it's all quiet. Yep,
absolutely. And we learned from the Q post that every 4 a.m., the CIA puts out the talking points for each one of the mainstream media to say, this is how they're so coordinated. You talk on you turn on the different shows each morning or whatever, the different news channels, and they're all talking the exact same talking points. And it's because it came from 4 a.m. from the CIA. So this is interesting stuff that's been going on for a long time. A definite Orwellian society we've been living in, where Big Brother has been in control more than we've known for a long time. The deep state Big Brother, anyway. And the people just don't seem to care.
It was probably happening, but just that through people like you, we're more aware of it.
Yeah. The good thing is more and more people are becoming aware of it. Not just me, but other people are picking up on this now and doing YouTube channels on it. I've heard other places that are pretty mainstream that are now starting to talk about QAnon and things like that. And I'm kind of surprised that I'm hearing that from not exactly mainstream, but very close to it. It's getting closer and closer to where it's going to break out into the mainstream. So it's something they can't ignore anymore because of so many things that have been taking place, so many things in government that have been disrupted already. There was an interesting QAnon post, and I can't remember the guy's name, Robert Barlow or something like that. On January 21st, there was a QAnon post said Robert something, I can't remember his middle name, Barlow. And then it said heart attacks can be deadly, and then something else. And I think it was 2 days ago, this guy turns up dead. died in his sleep.
Right.
So that was a prediction of somebody being wiped out in advance. So like QAnon says, they do hear all and see all. So what they're doing is they're using the deep state apparatus against themselves. So they're hearing these plans of the people.
Do you think
this,
people are a bit worried? Like, they're all quite worried about where this is going to go and what it's going to do, because obviously it's going to change history and everything.
Yes, the left in particular, but it's not all limited to the left. They're deep staters. Most of them are on the left, but not necessarily all of them. They are, I think, in full panic mode right now, and they're openly calling. We've had 2 people on television openly call for people to go into the streets. We've also had 2 different people call for somebody to take out Trump. This is on mainstream media. They're calling for the death of the president. So that's how desperate they're getting. They know the noose is tightening. And as this plan goes out, I know it's a lot slower than a lot of us want to proceed, but he's been saying, trust the plan. You'll see it soon enough.
So you think they're trying to do things behind to Trump, are they, while all this is happening then, if these words are being mentioned, like kill him and stuff like that they're trying to carry on, do things behind the scenes about it their way?
Yeah, they're even doing it in front of the scenes. One of the people that came on was a person who was in the FBI, which is evidently totally corrupt now. And he said, how dare Trump come after the FBI? We've been around since 1908 or whatever it's been. He's only been there for 14 months or whatever it's been. He said, I know how this ends, meaning they're going to take him out or win in the end. So they're openly threatening him. The FBI is under the Department of Justice here, which is under the president. So they're saying that they're above the law. And, constitutionally, there is no reason for an FBI. There just isn't, or a CIA. And I personally think they should be disbanded. And maybe they will be. Maybe they will be. Who knows?
They've been lying. Can I just say that somebody in the chat room, Boris, he said, can you ask Rich what he thinks about Trump congratulating Elon Musk and praising NASA so much lately?
There's something weird going on there with Musk and Trump. I'm convinced that Musk helped out with the shooting down of the Hawaii missile and then the Japan missile that happened about a month ago now. And because we saw things in the QAnon post that indicated that the SpaceX launch the night before that Hawaii missile thing happened was necessary to be able to take out the missile when it happened. All we were told was missile, and then Red October. We found, after the fact, that made sense what they were talking about. But that weird kind of Elon, that weird kind of thing that he put up there that looked like a fish or whatever, or a blimp, that obviously didn't go into space. It was in, I don't know even what you would call it, low Earth orbit or whatever, high atmosphere orbit. Oh, that's another thing too. Remind me to get back to that as far as the hearing the SpaceX thing. But I'm convinced he worked with the government to help take out those missiles. How, I don't know.
Do you believe those missiles were real then?
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% convinced the Hawaii one was, and I'm pretty sure the Japan one was. I'm not sure with Japan.
They were supposed to be nuclear bombs, and they blew them out. Then there's got to be fallout, hasn't there?
Well, they shot. I don't know if they were nuclear or not. I suspect they were, or tactical. I don't know. Or MOABs is really what I suspect. Mother of all bombs is what I suspect they were. And all the different intelligence people who are on the backside, who have different channels and things like that, all their contacts are saying the missile was real. That's why NORAD was activated. When everybody got a text message saying that to seek shelter because of a missile, that was actually NORAD being activated. And that's why it wasn't just a quick click, make a mistake. That doesn't happen. So that only happens if a missile is being fired or is about to be fired. But all those, every single one has come back with the same intelligence that there was actually a missile. It was shot down, and that the either submarine or small ship that fired it was located and taken out as well. And something about the SpaceX launch had to do with that. And I don't know what that was.
Golly.
So now the other
history of time, though, there's never been, like, for a very long time, anything like that happening towards somewhere like Hawaii and Japan, and nothing seems to be much being said about it. I just find it incredible.
Oh, and that's because everybody believes what came out in the mainstream. Before I leave that subject, Trump is famous for doing things like that. After he got elected, or before he got elected, he said he loved WikiLeaks. After he got elected, he said Julian Assange should be arrested. Well, now we know he's been working with Julian Assange the whole time. And he is probably already freed. He went, there is no speculation about this. It's absolute fact that Trump and his lawyers went to court and sued, saying that Julian Assange had the right to publish those WikiLeaks documents, whether they were stolen or not, and whether he knew they were stolen or not. He can't be held guilty for that as a journalist. And the court ruled in Trump's favor, or in Julian Assange's favor. So Trump tends to throw people off by saying one thing and doing another out in public. And I think it's to keep, it's almost like keeping the dogs off the right scent. So even though he may be talking positive and giving money, so to speak, to NASA and SpaceX, I suspect there's something deeper there that is going to come down, that's going to surprise us. There's going to be a 180 turn at some point. But until then, he's going to use them for his benefit. Now, as of the 13th, Julian Assange should be able to come out in public and show where he is, because that's when that was another fake news that came out. Somebody said that Julian Assange's, I think it was NBC News, said that the British court had ruled against Julian Assange and that he wasn't going to be freed, blah, blah, blah. But Julian Assange tweeted out immediately saying, this is fake news. I don't even have the hearing until the 13th. So, or the decision isn't until the 13th. So that's another sign of desperation there, where people are trying to, one of the things QAnon said, there's going to be a lot of disinformation on both sides that comes out. But getting back real quickly to the SpaceX thing, I remember, I wish I could find the video of one of these balloons that went up to, I don't know, 100,000, 110,000 feet. And at some point when it passed, I believe about 75,000 feet, you couldn't hear it anymore. There was a beep going on with the camera. It was going beep, beep, beep. It was kind of annoying. And as it got up, the beeping started going down. And once it hit a certain point, let's just say 90,000 feet, you couldn't hear it anymore because there wasn't enough atmosphere. And yet this SpaceX thing is supposed to be in space, and it's still firing its engine, and you can hear it. It's like, how can you hear that without any atmosphere? So it's other stuff that's so fake, that's right in front of people's faces, but they don't think. They're not taught to think critically about it. But here they are in space, and we can hear the engine going by from an external camera on the rocket. Please.
There's a few people in the chat room who feel that Trump is the puppet. Do you think that?
No. And that's fine. They can think that all they want. Time will prove it out. And, well, I'll tell you what. One of the things I'm probably going to post probably before next Saturday is there's a person on YouTube. His channel is called Montagraph. And he's got a totally different take on the QAnon thing. He thinks that's a distraction. And they're bringing to distract us while they're bringing in this wetwork stuff and wetware stuff rather, and 5G technology, different things like that, Android stuff, all these other things. And that possibly could be true, to where they're going to pretty much start the mark of the beast system and whatever. And he thinks that's where it's going. And I don't think it's going that way, but let's just say he's right. Either way, to me as a Christian, it's a positive. If he's right, we're out of here, because it's the very end of days. If it's going to get down to the mark of the beast system and all of that taking over, and we become the Internet of Things with us being wetware from breathing in all these metallic particles from chemtrails and all that. But anyway, it's an alternative viewpoint. that's very dark, and but it's worth listening to. There's nothing wrong with listening to an alternative point of view. To me, I've seen too many things that are proofs that he's not a puppet, and that everybody in any kind of elite is against him. And if that's a ruse, it's a good one. And the reason why I don't think he's a puppet is because it always comes down to fruits. By their fruits you shall know them. And also, a house divided against itself cannot stand. He's doing a lot of dividing of the house of the deep, dark state for it to be a positive, in my opinion. But again, I'll give links to the monograph. There's 2 videos. One's a very short one. One's about a 45-minute one, I believe. And they're worth listening to. And either way, it's good news, in my opinion. Either the deep state's going to be thrown out and you're going to see a lot of positive things very soon, or we're going to see the end of days biblically if monograph is right. Now, he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God, but yet what he's discussing is pretty much the book of Revelation playing out. So interesting stuff. But either way, it ends up being a good thing if you're a Christian, because we're going to be thrown free of this, or at least given a respite from all this soon. Either way, if that makes sense.
So is what happening in America right now is behind the scenes, all these people are vying to get in their positions for whatever. Is that
for the most part? Yes. I would say 95% of the American people have no idea what's going on right now behind the scenes. And you have people, you have a certain percentage of population, I don't know what it is, let's call it 10%, that believe every lie of the left. And I'm not a left-right person. I'm not. I used to be, but I'm not. I'm a libertarian, so I'm for liberty, period. So it's not that I'm for or against one or the other, but the left has always been without morals, without a compass. And they've gotten to the point where they've radicalized themselves. They've gone so far left that there's no room on the left here in America for discussion, for trying to meet in the middle. No, it's all radicalized. There was, even this week, there was some things in the news where people were at abortion clinics saying, I kill my babies on purpose, and different. That's how far it's gone. And it gets to the point where the Bible talks about a reprobate mind. And once you get there, once your conscience is seared, you can't unsear a seared conscience. So there's going to be those that we're going to have to deal with. And hopefully the rest of the majority of the population that isn't aware, when they start getting these little red pills, and that's the whole idea behind building up this QAnon stuff slowly, is to slowly wake up people so they're not shocked awake. I say shock them, but they've been working on this plan for 30 years, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They know more than I do, and I'm sure they've taken into account, in fact, I know they have, psychological operations and how to deal with populations so that they don't get upset and things like that. So it's longer than I want. It's longer than what most people want, but it is playing out. Most of the people right now are oblivious to it, but every day that goes by, more and more people are waking up to it. That's the good thing. But there will probably be a series of events that'll come very soon, probably this month and next month, that will, what I call, shock awake larger and larger groups of the population as they have to finally ask what the hell's going on here. So that's where I see that.
So what do you think Trump's doing then? Just biding his time?
He, to me, is just a player. He, I said it before, I believe he was selected to run so that he could be almost the figurehead. And also legally, they wanted to do this legally. The military part of the government, which is the only part that wasn't totally corrupt, and military intelligence have been working on this plan since at least Father Bush's presidency. And just to recap for those who haven't heard this before, the military was thinking of a coup at that time because he wanted to take us into this new world order. And my understanding is under Obama also, they were very close to a coup because of what he was doing to the military, all the hundreds and hundreds of generals and admirals and things like that he was taking out of the military. He was giving them tests. to see if they would do unconstitutional things, and if they wouldn't do it, he was getting rid of them. So the good people he was getting rid of. And the military realized this was going on, and a bunch of them got together and decided they were going to take him out. But then they evidently got together with the first group that started back in the 1980s or whenever it was, and decided to do this plan. And they recruited Trump, and Trump agreed to do this, assuming that he. Now, here's a good proof to me that he's not a puppet. Trump evidently has been using his own money to help this. He was worth a little over $4 billion when he came in to the presidency, and he's now worth $3 billion. So he's given up $1 billion in a year to do this. So that's if that's a puppet, he's paying for it. So, and big time, that's $1 billion he's paid to be a puppet. But anyway, he I think bought into this plan, thought it was a good plan. They guaranteed him he wouldn't be wiped out like Kennedy was. Kennedy was the last president to really try to take on the deep state. And they said, we're not going to allow that to happen to you. In fact, one of the things happened yesterday, said the Secret Service is on high alert. It said POTUS has been free. The President of the United States has been freed. I don't know what that means yet. But the Secret Service is on high alert. High chatter. Evidently, there's a lot of people now talking about taking out Trump, and so they're in high alert to protect him. So he's doing a lot of stuff that, I mean, you name me one elite faction that is on his side, and maybe I'll start thinking about him being a puppet. But you have the politicians against him in both parties. You have the elite in the media. All the media is against him. You have Hollywood is against him. You have the Soroses and the Rothschilds and the higher ups in the world. They're against him. So all the elite are against him. So if he's being a puppet, he's doing a good job of acting like, or they're doing a good job acting like he's on the other side. And maybe Monograph is right. That's all the part of the plan. But I thank God that I don't have that kind of viewpoint, because to me, that's a defeatist viewpoint. Like, you can never take it back. So many people leave comments. This is never going to be taken down. It's too late. It's never going to change. Well, that's a defeatist attitude. If they would have had, I'm sure a lot of people, in fact, most people did have that attitude during the first American Revolution with the British. It was a very small percentage of American colonists who took on the British, and most people thought you couldn't defeat the king and things like that, and never did join the other side or join the side of the Americans. And that's, I think, what's going on right now today. It is, to me, the second American Revolution. And if you can show me, the elite that are on his side, maybe I'll start thinking otherwise. But they're attacking him left, right, and center, literally everywhere.
Just to get this right, though, I think you did say that the military are standing behind Trump, aren't they?
Yes. If you go to, anybody listening to this, go to the inauguration speech of Trump. You'll only have to go about 2 minutes into him actually speaking once he was inaugurated. Watch what goes on behind Trump. You have this military exercise, which I never ever remember seeing with any other State of the Union, any other inauguration, where the military literally lined up behind him, saying they had his back. Just look at about 2 minutes into his speech. There was a nice little parade behind him as he was speaking, and
they did that
a lot of people missed that. They did it publicly. Yes. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, so everybody go and watch that then.
Yeah, maybe I'll grab that clip and show it on my channel soon too, because that was a big deal that most people missed. Now, at the time when I saw it, I knew it was weird. I just thought, well, maybe there's some kind of new thing they're doing or whatever. It made no sense to me. But now with all this, once I found out, when I heard that video about the 30-year military plan to take back America, and then with all the QAnon stuff, now it all makes sense, all of it.
So why would Trump then just be praising SpaceX then? Why would he be doing that? Because he's got publicly looked like he's carrying on.
Well, like I said, he was. Look at the. I think what we have to do is wait and see what comes out, because first of all, I know that Trump knows we didn't go to the moon. Oh, I don't know if anybody saw this. This is a little tangent, but somebody found a 2014 tweet from Buzz Aldrin where he admits we did not go to the moon. I don't know if anybody heard that or not, but somebody actually published that this week.
Well, why do they wait so long then? Do you find it's really weird how some of these things come out months later and they're all sort of put in? And wouldn't that have been great to have had that 2 or 3 years ago, and it comes out now?
Yeah, but this was 40 some years after he supposedly went to the moon. He said it was staged. It was a movie staged event, which we all knew anyway. I mean, all you have to do is examine it to know it's not true. But people want to believe, whatever the government says. But he actually tweeted that out. Of course, it was taken down. But if you go back with the what's it called, the time machine or whatever, you can find it. And somebody actually has the actual screenshot of the Twitter feed post that he did, admitting that it was fake. But getting back to your question again, he actually said he thought WikiLeaks should have been. Or Julian Assange should be arrested, that he was a criminal. And yet that was what he was saying. And yet his actions were different. His actions were going to court to make sure he was freed. And I think that was a ploy to keep people not looking at that and focusing on it so that they could thwart those plans. So we'll see what that comes out. But I'm convinced he knows that Trump knows that that going to the moon was fake. And so he knows that NASA is involved in deception, because the map that came from a link that was shared from QAnon, which we know is connected with Trump, there's no doubt, showed that it showed Stanley Kubrick, which so many people have said he was the one that faked the moon landings with his director abilities. And there was a direct link in that map to Stanley Kubrick and NASA and the moon landing. So Trump knows. The question is, what is NASA really doing with our money? If they're not going to space, what are they really doing?
Isn't it a bit more than that, though, Rich? Isn't there like the secret side of NASA? NASA's the public side, and you've got, well, originally when I was watching this, Obama was president. So it was like he was talking about the rockets going off. And you just think, well, rockets are so old fashioned now. There's something that have been around a long time. There's other things they use and can do. And the NASA's the public side, which they show us, which is just like you say, it's like what do you call it? It's a Hollywood film set. But it's the military in secret. There's another side of NASA. I can't remember what it's called now. Like is it NISA? I don't know. It's called something very similar to NASA, but it's not NASA. Those are the ones that will have all of it and what's going to happen, and that's all kept out of the sky.
Yeah, I'm convinced that NASA is the CIA on steroids, and also that they're probably working more with underground military bases than anything in space at all. We know they're not in space. That's a diversion. What better way to hide what you're doing under the sea than having everybody look up? And I can't verify that for sure that that's what they're doing, but I'm pretty convinced they are a spy agency just like the CIA, if not a better one than the CIA.
So
and what they're involved in,
spy upon spy upon spy.
Yeah, God only knows what they're into, but it has nothing to do with space. Other than that's a diversion. And you notice that SpaceX was supposed to be the first private company that was going to go into space, and yet didn't take long at all, did it? Once they started getting a rocket on the launching pad, suddenly they merge with NASA, so it becomes a quasi government agency, which is really a full government agency. So there's nothing new under the sun. It's just an expansion of NASA in a different way. I do believe that Elon Musk did help again with that shooting down the rocket in Hawaii. I don't know how that was done or whatever, but I think his rocket was used to launch whatever was needed to be able to shoot that down. And that's why we had that funky looking thing with like a fish or whatever, or a whale it looked like, or I don't know what else you could call it. And then you had that thing in the middle that would spin. That wasn't in space. That was something everybody could see from the ground, not far up at all. But people believed it. Oh yeah, that's a satellite in space. It's like, hello.
Right. Well, we all know that they don't exist. The closest to space are the Saturn balloons. That's the closest. They're not in space.
Yeah. Well, when the Aberdeen balloon, I talked about this on my channel about a year and a half ago. There's a balloon in Aberdeen, Maryland, which is a military installation, and there's always this balloon when you're driving up I-95. You can look off to the right and you can see this balloon as you're heading north on I-95, way up there, a blimp. And it broke loose and blew up into Pennsylvania, landed in a horse farm or something, some Amish farm. And they were freaking out. And they even said in the newspaper that this left the entire east coast of the United States vulnerable to missile launches from Russia coming over the North Pole into America. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we had satellites to be able to notice that. So you're telling me it's a balloon over Aberdeen, Maryland that's looking for these things, not satellites? I mean, it's stuff that's right out in the middle of people and they just, just blow it off. Or it's like we had the scare when we had the problem with Obama and Syria and Russia, when Russia was hanging around the underwater cables between North America and Europe. They admitted in the paper over 93% or whatever it was, 94% of all worldwide communications would be cut if Russia decided to cut those cables. It's like, well, I thought satellites carried 90% of the communications of the world, not underground cables. So these are things that slip out that nobody even thinks about because they're so asleep and can't critically think. But they're telling you right to your face, hey, something is different than what you've been told. A blimp is necessary to protect us from incoming missiles from Russia, and that's what's looking out for us. And 90-some% of the communications of the world could be cut out if Russia cuts those underground cables. Well, something's wrong then with our belief of satellites. In both cases. But people don't think that's the problem.
Here around the UK and off, it's all cables under the sea.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it has been for a long time. Somewhere between World War I and II, I think, is when they were laid. And they've laid them since, too, to renew them.
Wow. Do you know what? I really can't wait for some of this truth to come out. I would like it all to come out. I just can't wait.
I know. Waiting is the hard thing. We've been talking about, I've been talking about flat earth since 2015, and there are more and more people coming to it. There is one thing I noticed. There is an ad version of people talking about QAnon and flat earth when they come up and say, oh, they're flat earthers and they're not awake with this stuff. Well, I'm talking about both. So evidently there aren't a lot of people talking about both flat earth and QAnon. And that's probably a bad thing, because I think that's probably a good assessment. A lot of the mainstream flat earthers, that's all they're into. They don't look at anything else, or if they do, it's only briefly.
Does it make you, like, you were a military man, so you put yourself forward for your country, and then you find out the whole thing's a lie? Is it sort of, I don't know if making you angry is the right word, because obviously we're in peace here. But how did that make you feel as a military man, realizing now that all that was fake? It's all a game.
The thing that bothers me most about the military is, and I'm not going to, I want to set something straight about most people to go in the military. Most people, not all, but most people don't go in because they have this great pride for their country and want to defend the country. When I went in, it was under Jimmy Carter's era, and there was no jobs if you were a teenager. I was a teenager during the Jimmy Carter years, and the economy was horrible. And so the military gave me an opportunity. I didn't have money, so I couldn't go to college, and I wanted to do meteorology, weather, and that's what I could do in the Navy. So that was the main reason why I went in. Now, I am patriotic. I'm very patriotic. But that wasn't the driving force to get in. I can tell you the big thing that bothers me more than anything else about the military, and this comes full circle back to the guest I'm hoping to have on, is that I probably received between 40 and 50 injections in the military. And these were experiments. A lot of them were experiments that were done on us that are known by this person, specific ones, that are now starting to happen, in my life with health reasons and things like that. For example, I have no history of heart disease in my family, nothing like that. I had no high risk factors. I did smoke previously, but I quit a long time ago. And then in 2015, all of a sudden I had a heart attack. Well, when I was speaking with this woman, she said, well, tell me what years you were in the military.
Sorry, I didn't know that, Rich.
Yeah, I had a massive heart attack in 2015. And she said, what years were you in the military? And I told her, and she added it up. She goes, that sounds right. She said, what they do is one of the reasons why they inject so many things into veterans and have done so many experimental things without us knowing is they don't want us to live long enough to collect the benefits from like a military pension or whatever. So she says a lot of veterans, about 55 to 60 years old have heart attacks and other things like that, or they have quote unquote PTSD, or they commit suicide. These are all things that they injected to come to life later. And they've been doing this since the 1950s and 60s. In fact, she thinks I was in during a period where they actually injected a small amount of Agent Orange in my system. So it's stuff like that that pisses me off. I had other things that mysteriously happened when I was young, 5 to 10 years after the military. I got pneumonia and an intestinal, it felt like appendicitis. This was 1989. I actually went to the hospital thinking I had acute appendicitis. And to this day, I still have that pain. It's not bad, but it's there every day. And she said, there's a lot of veterans that have that. It depends on what you were injected with. So these are the things that piss me off more than anything else, where the government was experimenting on me without my knowledge. And we would literally stand in a line, and people on the left and right of us would stand there with guns to shoot you with injections. And you would take a step forward and they would go, doo, doo, one on each side, take another step, doo, doo, take another step, 6, 7, 8 deep. They're shooting you. And they repeat that 2 or 3 times to where you have 40 to 50 injections in you by the time you get out. And not only that, but every time we went to, Africa or a different continent, oh, you need new injections for this place. And it's all right. Rubbish. We know that now it is.
Were you around in the sort of first Middle Eastern war, when we were out in Iran and Iraq? Because that was when it came out in the public about the soldiers being injected with so many things, and all these soldiers were ill.
No, I was in before that. I was in from 80 to 84. It was a relatively peaceful time. We had 2 events that went on. One was Lebanon. The U.S. Embassy in Lebanon was attacked just after I got in. That was one event. The other was Grenada, I was there, but we didn't participate other than just a show of force. But Lebanon was an interesting thing. That was the first time I learned that the government doesn't tell the people what's going on. I remember writing my mother after we had bombed Lebanon and ask her, how did it go as far as, how did they write it up in the newspapers? How did the news people talk about it? And she wrote back and said, I don't know what you're talking about. But we actually retaliated against the forces in Lebanon that attacked that embassy, but it was never broadcast to the American people, never released. And I'm sure there's people in the chat who say, oh, you're full of crap, it never happened. But I was there. I lived through it. I was in the weather office. I had to clear. In fact, there was a controversial thing as far as whether they could use sighted or unsighted bombs. And I was calling for a certain ceiling of 2,000 feet ceiling. And that was their limit. That was right at the limit, where if it was 2,000 foot ceiling, they had to use it wasn't as good as today with the GPS and all that. They had to use non-visual bombs, and they wanted to use visual bombs. And it was an argument back and forth, even up to the captain. But I was the observer, and they can't legally force you to change it so they can have certain bombs. The long and short of it was we figured out that because of the land being warmer over we were at sea, so the water heats slower than the land. So we figured we got temperatures from Lebanon. They were warmer than what we were at sea, which meant they would have like a 2,300 foot ceiling there instead of over the ocean. So that was the loophole that allowed them to use visual guided bombs. And not only did they use them, but the planes came back with strafe holes in them, gun holes in the wings and things like that. So I know it went down. I know it happened. And the USS New Jersey was there at the same time, bombing the hell out of the coast with Volkswagen-sized bombs. And they were there for weeks doing that.
Why they had to make sure a lot of people had to die, because a lot of people then were doing all these back missions that the public didn't know about. So basically, they have to sort of, they don't want lots of witnesses around, do they? They have to kill them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you won't find anything online, anything anywhere that tells about a military exercise or retaliation that the U.S. government did in Lebanon, but it happened. And that was the first time I realized that a lot of things were probably being kept secret from us as a population, even way back then. I was literally shocked that it wasn't reported because it was a very successful mission.
How does that make you feel then, like as a military person? Just wondered, when you find out this whole life that you'd sort of put in was one big lie and cover up for something else.
Yeah, as a military person, it is what it is. As a citizen, that's what bothers me. Not as a military person, but as a citizen, it bothers me that we're kept in the dark. We're the ones that are abused by the system. And also, we're not told, and, it's pretty common knowledge that millions of civilians died in Iraq. But most people in America don't even think about that or know about that. They don't realize that women and children and people that had nothing to do with the war in Iraq were destroyed. Whole families, villages, cities destroyed by the U.S. military, just so we say we did it. There was no real military objective there. And if I wasn't in the military, I wouldn't believe that that was the case. But after being in the military, I believe it. And so that's what gets me, is the amount of fluoridated people, I guess is no other way to put it. The people are just so docile and don't care. They don't, as long as they can get to the next, I guess, weekend of sports and whatever they're into, they're happy. Bread and circuses. That's where we are. We're in a bread and circuses, later part of the Roman Empire days in modern times.
I'm really sorry that they injected you with all that stuff, though, Rich, because you wouldn't have had this heart attack. You wouldn't have had all these other things that you've got now. Yeah,
well, there may be good that comes out of it. This silver ozone and a bunch of other things they're going to be taking. It's quite expensive, but I just sent away a money order to be able to get this. So I'll be able to, you wouldn't believe the medical conditions I have. You just wouldn't believe it. But evidently she's going to be able to handle all of these things with what she knows. She's in the medical field. She has a degree, and she's been studying this stuff for a long, long time. And it's mostly nanotechnology, nanoparticles that they've been putting in. Again, stay away from any Coke product, Pepsi product, or Nestle product, at least here in the United States. I don't know if I'm sure it's probably in Europe too. They have a certain amount of nanoparticles that they have in there that they are waiting to activate, or they can be activated, again, by microwave radiation, which can be from a cell phone or cell tower or whatever. And these things are done for population control and different things like that. But there are things and alternatives that not only cure that, but cure cancer. And that's another thing. With the Q post, that's another thing that's supposed to come out, is cures for cancer, cures for AIDS, things like that. That was in recent Q posts. So that technology is going to be released as well.
Yeah, I hear that. You hear it rather than knowing it, but AIDS is a lie as well.
What is?
And they would give AIDS is a lie as well. It's just,
yes, AIDS. She says AIDS was definitely created by the government, CIA, whatever. I can't remember specifically. She's told me so much it's hard to keep the facts together. But when I interview anybody that wants to see that will know. Not only that, but you'll definitely know she knows what she's talking about. You can name any disease or whatever. She'll say such and such developed that in this year. It was injected first here, and then it was spread this way. I mean, she knows all the details. She's one of those people I think you have to worry about. In fact, that's another thing that Q posted, is he said, how many all natural, whatever doctors, alternative medicine doctors have died. And then I think there was I'm not sure if Q posted or one of the announcers posted it, but it was a picture of 90 different all natural doctors, for lack of better terms, that have died in the last so many years of mysterious deaths, car crashes, different things like that, heart attacks. They've also said Antonin Scalia, who was the Supreme Court justice. This isn't new news. He was what was called 187, or he was murdered. But that actually goes directly back to the Clintons again and John Podesta. And a lot of people are familiar with the tarmac incident where Bill Clinton, during the investigation into Hillary's emails, met with Loretta Lynch, who was the then Attorney General. They met on the tarmac here in Phoenix. And what was offered to her for the investigation to go nowhere, which it did, was she was going to take over Scalia's part in the Supreme Court. Obama had nominated someone to the Supreme Court, but the Republicans had said, no, we're not going to take up a nomination until the next president, whoever that is. And they thought it was going to be Hillary, and Bill Clinton offered that to Loretta Lynch on the tarmac. So that's why she was exonerated for that. And that was the quid pro quo there, was Loretta Lynch was going to be on the Supreme Court. God help us all. So if he knows that all this is going to come out, it's all criminal. I mean, every time you mention any of these things, it's criminal indictment after another that can be done with these things.
I bet you can't wait for this to come out, really.
Yeah, it's an itch that you can't scratch. Is what it is.
But then what does it mean? I mean, I think you said that we're going to pandemonium for a bit and then everything will calm down.
I hope everything calms down. It depends on how the people take it. I say screw the people. They've been screwing us over by being quiet and docile. Shake them up, wake them up with a shock. Who cares? But I guess they, while they're fighting this deep state, which is so deep and so expansive and it involves so many thousands of people, that they don't have the resources to be able to handle big unrest in the streets. At the same time, they're going to be trying to arrest all these thousands of people, including high government officials in Congress and everywhere, up to 40% of them. We just had somebody else from the FBI step down this morning, I believe. So people that can't see the handwriting on the wall, I feel for them, because the evidence is all around them. We've had more people
off anymore, can they? You can't. Otherwise, what's the point of having, the government? They've been governing us and pushing us and lying to us. If something doesn't change, I just hope enough people wake up and just don't want this.
Yeah, but the word government means control of the mind control.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done to the vast majority of the people.
He said something very important, that they've let us build our own prisons. And, apartment, when you look at the word, it means to be apart from.
Yes. Yeah, so there's something else along that line, too. I can't think of it right offhand that goes along with that I just heard, too. But that's very good, too. Yes.
I mean, no wonder they don't want us living more in the country and being, of course, America is huge and there's lots of land in the country. They want you near those goddamn cell towers. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, I may be saying this wrong, but I thought I heard somebody say that the state of Texas alone could, I don't remember what it was, how many acres, but each person in the country or the world could fit in Texas and still have enough room to where they were comfortable. They weren't all crushed in. But I don't know if that's true or not, but I can tell you that when you're traveling across the country, you go hours and hours and hours in the middle of the country of just open land. So there's plenty of room, and we're not the only country in the world. So there's plenty of open lands everywhere. Oh, here's another one. Did you hear about the Rothschild estate that they just sold in Austria?
Right.
They sold it for, it's probably worth several billion. In fact, the Rothschilds have had it in their, I think 180 years or some ungodly number of years. The Rothschilds have owned it. They sold it for so many millions of dollars, not billions. And that's because they are hard up for money, because under Trump's executive order of December 21st, when he declared a national emergency, he froze all their assets. These are things that people can see.
Was that done because of the threat on his life? And they tried to, is that why it's a state of emergency? Or because
No, the state of emergency, I think, was done for two reasons. One, it's part of the plan. With that state of emergency, they can freeze the assets, and that's the big deal. If you can freeze their money, that'll knock a lot of people out. For example, the head of Alphabet, Google, stepped down the very day that executive order went into effect, and Q said that is not a coincidence. He wanted to take, what's his name, Schmidt or whatever, he wanted to take what money he could before it was frozen. So that was the first step. It also allows military tribunals and different things like that to be held if it's sedition or treason. That's a big deal also, which would allow Guantanamo Bay to be used. Also, Diego Garcia is a U.S. possession in the Indian Ocean, where, as Q put it, do you expect Obama and Clinton to be able to go to some liberal court with a liberal jury somewhere and have justice actually served to them? And the answer is no, because the people are so blind. They'd be like, oh, well, I wanted her to be president, so she can't be guilty of anything. So the obvious answer to that is to have military tribunals where you have military officials that are the jury, and they won't be tainted by politics one way or the other. You would hope not. But they can also be tried under that executive order for things that without a state of emergency would be much harder to do. So not only freezing of assets, but it opens up a lot of things like Guantanamo Bay. One other thing I heard about Guantanamo Bay and why it's been expanded, it had a $500 million expansion, was this capture and release that we have with the illegal aliens. Some of them have been captured and released 75, 80 times. Things like that, and they commit crimes sometimes in between. At some point, this capture and release is going to be captured and sent to Guantanamo Bay, and these people are not U.S. citizens, so they can do that under this special order also to protect the country. So there's a lot of different reasons why that executive order was put in place, and again, that's something else that people need to understand would not be done if there wasn't a plan behind the scenes that was going down. Now, a lot of people may remember, I believe it was 2015, there was an operation in the Southwest United States called Operation Jade Helm. And everybody in the truth community was freaked out about it, thinking the government was going to take over and different things like that. It was a fake operation. What they're really going to do is turn this into FEMA camps. And you can understand why with the president we had involved. I never did go down that path with that because I didn't see that way. Now, evidently, and I can't confirm this yet, but Jade Helm may have been an operation that the military had in mind for what's going on right now, being able to work in populated areas without the population know that you're there. That was the main thing with Jade Helm, to be able to work in and amongst the population without them knowing you're actually there performing an operation. And that is a perfect thing to have right now going on. In fact, it is what I believe is going on. The people aren't seeing it yet, but they're going to see it soon. And we saw live, I don't know who it was, but evidently somebody being arrested in Shanghai, China 2 days ago. He was posting live every couple of minutes, would update with a new picture of what was going down. So that's another thing people need to understand. If China wasn't working with the Trump administration, you would never get out of China those images live from the Shanghai Tower, whatever it was called, King's Tower in China. So these things are being coordinated on a worldwide stage, and people just want to deny these things and think, oh, that's just normal, but it's not. But we were getting a live feed from Shanghai and saw it live with the Q posts.
So why would somebody put in there, well, Trump's going, we're going to the moon and beyond. Why is he saying all that then?
Like I said, there's going to be a lot of deception that's going to be used on both sides. This is something that Trump does two things very well. One, he deceives his enemy with what he's going to do. He doesn't tell them his plans. That's one thing. And the other thing is he's very good at is trolling people. he gives them rope to hang themselves, and he's a master troll artist, and that's part of his personality that happens to fit well with this thing. So we'll see what the actual actions are when it comes down to it, but I don't think he believes we can go to the moon or anywhere else. And to me, that again was laid out in the map that that one hangout we had, that 6-hour hangout. That map, which was linked by Q, which is connected to Trump, clearly showed that he knew the moon landing was a hoax. So we'll see. I don't know. Like I say, he's very good at deception with stuff like that. Saying Julian Assange, he wanted him arrested, and in the meantime, he's filing in court to get Julian Assange freed. So look at the actions, not the rhetoric.
So has this tweeting gone a little bit quiet this last few days then?
No, it's just I've been quiet with being down with the migraines, but no, it's been going on. In fact, there's been some serious stuff that's evidently taking place right now. No big game changer yet, but it appears we're getting very close to the game changing thing where the people will start seeing things happen in front of their eyes. And then a lot of the people will have to say, yes, something is definitely going on. But it's a slow, methodic pace that they're using this 30-year plans. They've thought this up for 30 years. They're not going to jump the gun just because we're anxious to have something happen.
So in a sense, then they were actually really thinking that Hillary was going to get in, and then he didn't.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, the fix was in, and that's why the 3 states that used to have, I don't know if all 3 used to have, but at least I think 2 of them used to have electronic Diebold machines: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The military, part of the military plan was they had to get those Diebold machines out of critical states. And those 3 states went to paper ballots in the 2016 election. And lo and behold, Trump won those. And when they did a recount, he was getting more votes than the initial count because they were ballot stuffing in places like Detroit and things like that, and the audits weren't matching up. So they took out a lot of the ways they could cheat, but still they thought they were so confident. Why wouldn't you be confident? They had the entire, except for one channel, Fox News, they had the entire news media, both print and television, cable. They had them all on her side. They had it in the bag. They were leaking the questions to the debate to her. They did everything in their power to get her elected. In fact, there's famous clips where CNN, they were saying, oh, she couldn't have got a bigger break from us. We helped her all along to try to win. And these are not things I'm making up. There are actually clips out there where you can hear them saying it. So they were all on board. In fact, one of the things that WikiLeaks released was a party that John Podesta, who was the campaign manager for, or whatever, a campaign coordinator with Clinton, he had a party, and it's just a who's who in major news outlets, both print and media and on cable, who he invited over. They had parties. They gave them talking points, what they were going to say and do. They even said, we don't want stories about that. And if you're going to do this story, you have to say it this way. And we even know that they were calling up during the campaign. They were calling up saying, hey, I have this story. How do you want us to present this? And then the Clinton campaign would say, okay, present it this way. So they were so sure that she was going to win. And even if she, for some reason, wasn't going to win, they had enough states, they thought, to be able to pull the Diebold ripoff, which they did in Virginia. She was losing Virginia. All of a sudden, at the end, they kept holding off Fairfax County. It goes all the way back to the 1960 election between Kennedy and Nixon, where Kennedy won, and it was because Chicago was the Illinois was the big state then, and they couldn't tell which way Illinois was going because Chicago was out. Now, these big cities, they have the most modern electronic voting that you can have. They should be in an instant, whereas the others have to be hand counted. But yet they always are lagging behind, these big cities. They're the last ones to report. And 1960 tells you why. The Kennedy campaign called up Mayor Daley, the Daleys are one of the most corrupt politician gang people ever to run a city and state. Mayor Daley of Chicago answered the phone from the Kennedy administration and said, they asked Daley, said, why haven't you reported the vote totals for Chicago? And he honestly said, because we don't know how many votes you need. And they said, well, we need this many votes. And guess what? All of a sudden, Chicago came in with that many votes for Kennedy, and Kennedy won the election. So this is how they've been doing it. At 9:30 on election night, Hillary realized she was going to legitimately lose the election. So she coordinated with Obama and evidently Bush Sr. To change the machine vote in Virginia and these other states. But guess what? They couldn't do it in the 3 states I mentioned, and those are the 3 states that put Trump over. So Trump actually won many more states than we know of on election night. Another thing that was funny about election night was Georgia. It wasn't even close to being close, for Hillary at all. But Robbie Mook, who was another campaign manager for Clinton, had put out this BS spin that Georgia was going to go for Clinton, that their internal numbers showed that she was going to win. Well, nobody on election night for hours would call Georgia just because of that Robbie Mook rumor. They had all the exit polls and all the actual votes that said otherwise. In fact, it was about 1:32 in the morning. Most networks had still not called Georgia with 90-some% of the vote in, and Trump ahead by 7 points or 6 points, whatever it was. It wasn't even close. They were calling others way earlier than that were only 1 or 2 points apart. And the reason was all because the Clinton campaign didn't want to call it earlier, because that was the spin that they wanted, that Georgia was going to go in her column. So all kind of weird stuff was going on election night. She tried to flip it to her. They tried to flip it to her, but they got outmaneuvered evidently by the military, who switched those 3 states. Plus there were others that had already gone back to paper ballots. So it's a lot harder.
Might have been like, because they do these exit polls, and in the last few elections they've got it so wrong that maybe when people were asked, they might have said, yeah, I'm going to vote for Clinton, and they get to the booth and then they go Trump. So that it might have been right at the last moment, people went into the booth, they went Clinton, Trump. Yeah, I want something new, Trump.
Very early on in the election cycle, the Clinton campaign also had the pollsters on their side, contacted the pollsters and said something very simple: oversample women in your polls. And that's what they did. They oversampled women. They would have like 60%, 70% women in the poll. And women were more likely, especially early on, to vote for Clinton. And that's why it appeared that she was ahead. The typical way they usually look, and when you look at the internals of a poll, you say, oh, they oversampled Democrats. Well, they realized that people understood that now. So they had the same number of Republican and Democrat very close. They still oversampled Democrats slightly. And that's because the theory was that more Democrats were going to show up to vote. But they oversampled women, and nobody knew to look for that. And that's why she consistently was shown to have like a huge electoral lead. And of course, that wasn't the case, because they were skewing but it gets to a point where people believe their own lies. Not only if you tell a big enough lie long enough, do other people believe it, but you start to believe it yourself. And they believed they were just in a free ride that night.
Yeah, I don't feel I've got to sort of get that involved in your politics in that sense, because it's not my country, yeah. But I just couldn't understand when we all knew that she lied under oath for Clinton when he said he didn't have an affair with Monica Lewinsky. She lied under oath and said he didn't when she knew he did. Why would you want her as even trying to be the president, running for the president? She lied under oath to the whole country years ago. I know this is all play politics in a sense, because we know it's all bigger because of the flat earth thing. But I mean, my view back to that is I just couldn't believe that anybody'd want her ever in politics again because she lied under oath in the first place.
Oh, and there's so many other scandals she was involved in. She was involved in something called Whitewater, and so many other scandals. There are so many scandals that follow the Clintons. They're probably the most corrupt politicians ever in American history. Not only that, but the trail of people that have died around the Clintons is amazing. It beats any life insurance tables you ever want to see. But close friends and associates of the Clintons have this tendency to drop dead of mysterious reasons all the time, especially the day before they're about to testify against the Clintons. They just, like, I think I mentioned the last time we were online, I think, there was a guy who went to the gym, and he was supposed to testify the next day against the Clintons, and he had a barbell supposedly fall on his neck and break his neck. So break his windpipe so he couldn't breathe. But it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's constant crashes, both planes, trains, and automobiles.
I thought they were good, though, didn't they? I just pray that this all comes out, and that, I'm sorry, I just want her arrested.
Yeah, it'll come out. It will come out. The corruption is just so deep and so harsh. And what they're into is so sick. There's no doubt. I mean, you always know somebody. I mean, anybody with common sense, all you have to do is look at anybody. Who are your friends? If you show me your friends, I know who you are. And these people hang around with spirit cookers and Satan worshipers and just all kind of sick stuff that they're into. I won't get into all of it, but I think that's all going to come out. It's really sick stuff that they're into. Child molestation. Both Clintons have taken multiple trips on the Lolita Express, the Jeffrey Epstein airline that has an island where they have all kind of name your sexual deviancy, and he'll provide for it. On that island. It's mostly children. So all this stuff is going to come out, but it's sick stuff. And I don't know. It's just the level of corruption. I don't know how. Think about it. With all that corruption, even just the thought of the corruption that is around them and surrounded them, to have half the population vote for her is just nuts. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but obviously people aren't looking or reading or understanding.
And it's not a pro-Trump thing. It just isn't. It's an anti-Hillary thing. Again, I think Trump is just he's just a player that the military chose. And again, I don't know his politics, because I don't even think he knows his politics. I just know he's not corrupt like she is.
I mean, none of them are very good. It's just that he was the lesser evil.
Well, in that case, I thought it was evil and no evil. He was the first president I thought, other than Ron Paul, who ever ran for president in my lifetime anyway, that wasn't connected to any kind of the deep state or whatever, to any extent anyway. I'm sure he had to have connections as a business person, what he did, but none of the deep, dark corruption, the dark side, satanic side corruption and murder and things like that, that she has been involved in. I mean, there's now ties you can take back to her, to the Scalia murder of the Supreme Court, Seth Rich. All these tentacles go back to her. And she's also a patent attorney, which most people don't know, and she has had control of the patent for all these chips that are in every kind of transportation that moves, planes, trains, and automobiles, helicopters, whatever. These chips can be controlled to where you can cause a car to go out of control, cause a train to crash, and this is how a lot of the people associated with her have died. Yeah, she was a patent attorney, and she came across that and ended up scarfing that up herself, her and her cronies, and they've used that whenever they've needed to wipe out somebody.
Wow. I didn't know all that stuff. I suppose they just thought they were God, hey?
What's that?
They think they're God.
God? Yeah.
Yeah, they think that they can...
Oh, yeah, untouchable, yeah. They're omnipotent. Nobody can touch them. The untouchables, Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Well, I'm really hoping that something changes, because, you know, even if it was all just, you know, it is fake and everything, but those alerts going to people, I mean, gee, was that just a game to see what the people would do?
That's what everybody thinks. No, nothing to look here. Nothing to see here. Hello, NORAD was activated.
Yeah, you said it was the first time in the history of NORAD.
Yes, that it was actually activated. Yes. And everybody thinks, yeah, it was just a sort of like a fat thumb accident, pushing the wrong button or whatever. Unreal. These are people that have not been in the military who think that was an accident and believe the story. It just does not work that way. Nor would it ever.
No. I mean, I think this is so serious and just like being pushed under the carpet as if it never happened.
Well, that we're supposedly, according to Q, we're going to get all the details eventually on what happened in Hawaii and why. But it was a deep state, no doubt about it. It was a deep state firing back. And a lot of things have been happening around us that are very unusual, that people are just, it's just over their head. They're just not paying attention, that are going on every day that people should be saying, whoa, this is weird. Or even just look up how many CEOs. In fact, I'm going to look that up while I'm speaking to you. How many CEOs have stepped down in 2017, since 2017? I don't even know the number anymore.
Hmm.
See if I can get a number here. There's actually people keeping a list of them.
CEOs in what, big businesses or in the government?
Everywhere. There's a video that was published December 22nd, 2017. This is only one day after the executive order. And it says it's a video called Chronological List of CEOs Resigning September to December 2017. The name of the channel is Pam, P-A-M as in Mary, Jones for Liberty. And go there and just look and see what and this doesn't happen. CEOs are the most stable people at any business. They don't step down. It's rare. Because especially if they're listed on the stock exchange somewhere, that is a big sign of instability if the CEO is gone. So it hurts their stocks, and that's the last thing they ever want to do. But this is just a list from September to December, and it just goes on and on. Equifax, Nestle Serona Incorporated, Greater Naples CEO, PepsiCo CEO, Pepsi. Remember I was telling you about Pepsi and Coke? Samsung CEO.
Is this
Oman Air.
other people in then, Rich?
Yeah, the Red Cross. Oh, the Red Cross, that's all tied in with Rothschild. It's a scam for the Rothschilds.
Because the people are always the last to know, aren't they?
Yes.
We're always the last to know.
Well, what amazes me is now you're starting to know. You can have the ability to know, and people just want to deny that it's happening. And so I asked the question to them.
And they just get on, they just like put their heads down and carry on because it's kind of quite frightening.
I think it's mostly denial of that anything could ever change for the good. It's a defeatist attitude.
It's the money system, all of it.
Yes, it's all one big ball of wax.
All of it, no matter what his name, Clinton, Obama, Pope, Queen of England, no matter what their name, it's the money talk. It's the power of the system of the money. This is, it's the money can buy almost everybody and destroyed almost everybody. No wonder why on the $1 billion you find in God we trust. It's ironic.
Yes.
But it's very correct to do so. It's very correct. Because before you use this money, remember in God we trust. Yeah. And yeah, it's the money system, all of it.
I agree. That's supposed to also, we're getting hints that that's going to go away too, that he's fighting the Federal Reserve as well, eventually taking them out. We have little indications of preparing to get the U.S. Treasury to print U.S. currency again instead of Federal Reserve notes. Little things are being done there with the Federal Reserve too. Janet Yellen is out, and certain things, certain people that are being maneuvered into place at the Federal Reserve indicates to me that they're getting ready to possibly take that system out. I don't know if that's probably a later thing to do, because you take the banking system out, Trump better be in a bunker somewhere. Because that's
these people get so much power and so much power. So all this system is wrong, so wrong. With the banks and all this. Yeah, must be changed.
It's also a beautiful way to erase with the stroke of a pen the debt of the United States. All they have to do is nullify the Federal Reserve Act, and we owe them nothing then. It's just gone, as well as all the debt. And most people don't realize that either. Now, you do have to take care of things like other people that have bought your bonds and things like that, but you'd have to pay them with actual U.S. dollars, not Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah, well, it just seems that, I suppose it's not money that's corrupt, it's the people that's corrupt, but money, just this whole monetary system we're in with these banks, I just think they're trying to make sure everybody's on the streets, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they've been not so quietly, except quietly to the American public. The U.S. Federal Reserve has been buying up. They're the largest real estate holder now in the United States. Every time a mortgage goes down, the Federal Reserve is buying up that note so that they actually become the owner of the real estate. And I don't know how much actual land they own now, but they are the largest owner of real estate in the United States now as the Federal Reserve Bank. So that would have to be nullified also.
They're making sure that money's worth less anyway, and we've got plastic money now. I don't know whether you have. Our money's turned plastic.
It's close to it.
And nobody likes it.
Yeah, in my country, they change a lot, the money now. Different color. Yeah. I don't know what they do.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, they changed the pennies because the copper in the penny was worth 7 cents. So it was costing 7 cents to print 1 cent. Most people also don't realize that any coins in the United States that are in your pocket, change, whatever, that's not part of the Federal Reserve System. That is actually the original U.S. currency, still in its original form. But try carrying around $10,000 worth of quarters or whatever. So it's not very practical. But that is actually original U.S. currency, and it is outside the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah, well, there isn't.
And you've got the Bank of England, right? You've got the Bank of England, so it's the same thing.
Well, yeah. It's just all the lying and the fact that money isn't, anyway, in the death certificate, and it's not really a birth certificate, and trading on us. Oh, that I just can't stand it. And, you know, here I tried to take my bank to the ombudsman, but I know that I'm in something completely different. Do you mind me just explaining it just a tiny bit, or not? You're not bothered?
Oh, go for it.
Well, what it was is, you know, that over here, the High Court decided that the way that they had put the legal terms of this PPI meant that the High Court overturned it and it had to return the money to people. But it would have worked for probably 75% of the people, if not more. Just wouldn't have worked for those that were self-employed. This is then. And but the High Court, the High Court decided that everybody should have their money back. But then there's a section of people like me who basically had this product put on whatever it was. Mine was a Visa card, but it could have been a bank account. It could have been whatever. It's a product. And what it was is that I didn't even know I had it. So I don't have a legal document or anything to say that, that I even bought it. There's nothing to say I had nothing. And what it is that then what I found out from the bank was that originally on the back of the card, you had a telephone number to ring, and that activated the card. It doesn't happen now because now you just take the card out, use it, that activates it. But everybody at this period of time who rang up the number on the back of the card, there was a glitch somewhere, a mistake, and it added PPI to everybody's accounts. Now that's not
What is PPI?
Sort of insurance if you're made redundant and stuff like that. It's called PPI. But that's not the same thing as actually what the High Court decided, that the legal terms were wrong. People like me had wrong charges put on our bank accounts, Visa cards, the whole thing. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people like us. So that would break the bank codes. It would have broke the Data Information Act, because what it means is that all of us are carrying wrong figures on our bank statements or whatever it was put on. It's showing, and of course they get what do you call it, cloned to other systems, and then everybody's looking at your credit history and all that. So it means that the chief executive will have been told that the codes have been broken, but instead of coming clean and the bank telling the whole world that the people have been wrongly charged, they dumped us in with the PPI people. And I'm just disgusted, because it means that these banks have been trading in fraud. For me, I know this one since at least 2007.
Wow.
It's fraud. Because you could have been elderly, not known. Maybe you're out of the country for a few years, or still out of the country and don't realise. Maybe people have died, so it had been put on their accounts. Now, none of that money has been returned to them properly. Yeah, and we've been dumped in the PPI fiasco. But wrong charges put onto people's bank accounts, Visa cards and everything is something completely different. I never signed for it, no legal document. So I went to the ombudsman. They made, because the bank wouldn't deal with it, because they don't want to with people like me. They made me wait 4 years, and then the ombudsman said, due to the time difference, there's nothing we can do. So they let the banks get away with it. So then it made me think, oh my God, this is before I got into Flat Earth. Oh my God, the ombudsman are a government body being paid to do nothing. Because they can't help anybody, because they stick 4 years on and then they can't help anybody, because all the other bodies you need work in 6 months. And so they held off on my case. They held off on my case. They held off on my case. So really, the ombudsman are working for the banks. I asked for them all to resign. Of course they wouldn't, but I know what they've done to me, and it's fraud. Nothing less than fraud. But there isn't anything to help people like us, because we're stuffed into the PPI fiasco. So there's no way they can help us. You can't go to one of these places, the no win, no fee, because all they're interested in is the PPI, not what's actually happened. And they know, because I spoke to them, they know there are thousands of people like me. It's completely different. It's fraud. But anyway, so this is the kind of thing they do with money. But anyway, back to you, Rick. Back to you.
No, it's just we've been taken to the bank, so to speak, with a lot of people, a lot of different things, haven't we?
Yeah, and that's only just one of them. So goodness knows how many other things that are going on.
Now, is it over there the same as it is here? You can never really own your property. They say you can. You own your property, but you have to pay taxes every year on it. Do you have that there?
I don't know, but I did hear, because someone was mentioning, like an American, Tommy, I think it was, he's been in the chat room. He said the same thing. You just don't own anything in America. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway,
yeah, you don't. They say you do.
I've got.
They say you own it, but if
bank owns me.
If you don't pay your taxes.
Really? Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah, you don't pay your taxes, you'll find out what you owe. I mean, what you actually own, and it's not your land. So yeah, you can have your land all paid off for years, but every year you'll get a tax assessment, and let's say it's several $100s, whatever. It depends on how much it's worth, and you have to pay that every year. If you don't, they come and take your land.
We have to pay a council tax here. We have to pay, well, I mean, originally, taking aside flat earth, okay, and what it really means, but I mean, before that, when I looked at it, it just seemed that the local governments had no power. The MP had all the power. But now it's gone the other way. It's the council that has all the power. So you go, Mr. MP, oh, I can't deal with education. I can't deal with money. I can't deal with health. And I've written to mine. I said, well, what are you there for? You're just there for that cup of tea in the Houses of Commons, aren't you? Well, they like all that here, all that, don't they? Waff, waff, waff. Yeah, they like all that. So what's an MP there for if he can't help you? And he doesn't care either. And our one happens to be one of the richest ones in the country. I can't believe it. Like, what would we want him there for?
Yeah, almost all the ones here, all the members of Congress, the People's House, millionaires. They become millionaires almost immediately, right after they get there. They don't care about us.
I know it was probably a bit longer than this, but we've like through artists' work worked out that in the 1960s is when they actually turned us into this ball, right? Okay, it was coming, and maybe they were telling everyone, but of course, television, petrol, gas, all those kind of things, and you've got NASA going to the moon, the globe. Time savings as well. There was nothing to do with whether it was light in the morning or the evening. That was to make sure we went shopping more. 60 years. It's going to take probably centuries to unravel what they've done to us.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Because it's so bad. It's, what it gets me is this isn't just one mistake. This isn't just one error or a couple of errors or all that. It's layer upon layer. It's everything, like you said, the medicines, education, the wars, the television. It's television. It's everything. Everything is a lie. Everything.
Yep, absolutely. It's all lying. It's all directed at us. They've been working on this New World Order for, I don't know how many hundreds of years. And the culmination of it, probably what I would say is the last moves started probably in the 1950s and have gone all the way up to today. And of course, we had George Bush Sr. in the late 1980s. He was the first person to really come right out and say, we're going to be successful at a new world order. And a lot of people were awake back then and were like, whoa, what did he just say? But today, I mean, that just goes right over people's head. They don't even realize it. That's how great the lie is. When they had,
like, attorneys as the president and things, like there were people that were like solicitors, whatever it was. Those are the people now that we're in the government. I just found that really weird.
Yeah, there's something that you just mentioned there that I got to check. Apparently, there may be a clause in the Constitution that says that if you're a member of the bar, if you're an attorney, you can't be in Congress. And boy, would that kick them all out. That's about 95% of them. So I'm not sure that's the case, but I got to go and look up my constitutional law again to see. But that would be interesting. That'd be a way to get rid of a whole lot of them real quick. Of course, you'd have to find somebody to enforce it. That's the thing. Who's going to enforce the law? That's what we've been missing. And I think that's the role that Trump is playing. He's actually going to be somebody that does enforce the law or try to. It's a matter of who wins now.
Yeah, because like we had a couple on yesterday. We had Bling Bling, if you've heard of her. She's against obviously NASA, and Judith. They'd like to go to the police and report NASA for lying, but I mean, there's nowhere really to go, is there?
No. Where do you go?
Where do you go?
Here, most people would call the FBI, and now we find out they're the biggest perpetrators of breaking the law at the highest levels. So when your government officials are the ones that are the deep state and the local police are part of the deep state, I mean, who do you have left? I mean, here, it comes down to, and I'm convinced this is going to happen either way. It doesn't matter if the stuff with QAnon and Trump is true or not. The people are waking up to the point where there's enough that aren't going to put up with it anymore. I think the patience is already wearing thin. And if, let's say we get to this summer or fall, whatever, and nothing's being done, you're going to start seeing the militia of the United States start to form up and try to take care of these things ourselves. And I think that is where it's going.
So why do you think that Trump put that thing in on the 21st of December then about martial law? Why did he put that in then?
Again, a couple of reasons. One, the main reason was to freeze assets of like the Soros people, the Rothschilds, anybody that's involved in human trafficking in particular was mentioned. Was human trafficking and corruption or other corruption. So it was pretty broad, but human trafficking was brought out in particular. And all these higher ups, that's what they're involved in. So he's able to immediately grab their assets there. And if you grab their money, there's a lot of stuff they can't do. Soros causes a lot of disharmony in the streets here by funding these left-wing groups that go out in the street, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, different things like that. These are all Soros-funded organizations. And if he doesn't have access to his money, he can't fund them. And we found that real quick. In fact, that's another thing, too, that if people would just wake up and realize, since that executive order's been done, you don't find these, thousands of people in different cities organizing like they were before, going out and protesting. It's because the money isn't, most of these people are just doing it for the money. And if the money isn't there, they're not willing to go out and do it because most of these people are too stupid to be for or against a cause anyway. They're just there for the money that Soros was giving. So that was one reason to be able to tie up the funds of these people. Not only that, but if you start doing that, they have to start scurrying around and working around the system or trying to work around the system. That helps to expose them too, shine the light on them, so to speak. That's one thing. Also, it enables, like I was saying before, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, and other possessions of the United States to be able to be activated to take enemies of the enemy combatants or enemies of that executive order to these places to be held for military tribunals. And that was a big setup. And that's why a lot of people are stepping down as CEOs. They don't want to be caught up in this. And that's part of, I think, the big plan is that if you get enough people to just walk away from it, then you can go after the real big people that are in charge, like the Rothschilds and the Soroses. The House of Salt has already been cleaned out. Saudi Arabia.
Do you know what they do when they do change things? I noticed here there was a chief executive of the council, right? And she resigned. And then someone else came in and then a letter came to say, oh, well, she had passed this. We didn't. So that's not really anything to do with us. So when they change all these people, it's almost like getting rid of a responsibility to the people or to the company.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what I think. Do you see what I mean? That's where they change. But in reality, if all these CEOs are caught up in things from the past, they will still have to go to court no matter whether they've resigned or not. I think in the case of Schmidt with Google and Alphabet, I think because he left immediately, he was able to probably keep a lot of his money before it was seized. I don't know about the others, but he evidently saw an advantage to leave right away. And I don't know what he's involved in. It would not surprise me at all if he was involved in human trafficking, child sex, whatever, satanic worship. These elites, it seems like they have to be into that to become the elite, which is sad to say, but I think that's the sad reality of today, that Satan really does reward those who are on his side and that are deeply into the dark side. Pedophilia and trafficking children, things like that. The worst things you could do. They just become our elites. And that executive order helps to knock the funding at least out of them before they start getting squeezed actually literally from some sort of law enforcement. That's another thing. Trump's going after law enforcement in this country and the Department of Justice. So if you take them out, who's going to enforce the law? Well, the only thing you have left then is the military. And that executive order allows the military to step in and do that. Do you know what my thing about it, what I see is this whole thing about when they keep wanting to thrust this martial law in your faces. And I don't like guns, but because your constitution says you can carry guns, it's like so many Americans have guns, it would be more difficult to bring in what they want because your constitution says that you can actually remove the government. Do you see what I mean? If everybody
Yes.
didn't have guns, everything they wanted would have already been there and done years ago, but you've got guns. So yeah, it's a bit more difficult when half the country has got a gun.
Yeah, well, it's a lot more than half the country, I can tell you that. And yeah, that's the problem. I guess I think I showed on there on our Hangout the Bundy Ranch situation where the federal government tried to go in and take over that guy's land, the rancher in Nevada. And it was, what was it, 200 federal agents. And all of a sudden, 30,000 armed Americans showed up to defend that guy's property. And that forced the government to stand down. That's the kind of thing that not only have the founding fathers put into the documents, but it's legal to do that. Anytime the government gets out of line, it is legal for the people to do that here. That's why we've had all these false flags that involve guns, and then we have calls. We need to get rid of the guns. That's the problem. You know, they have these Sandy Hook false flags and Las Vegas false flags, where the government's using the guns on the people, but then they blame the people and say we need to get rid of the guns. That's why there's always an attack on the Second Amendment, which gives us the right to bear arms. And this is why.
I mean, I'm pretty pleased it's there though, because if that wasn't there, it would have already have happened. They'd have already done what they wanted to do years ago. Yeah,
there's no doubt the United States is the last bastion to fall. Most other parts of the world don't have the Second Amendment. Most of the populations are disarmed. So yeah, this is the last standing problem here for them, for the world government. What do you do with the people's guns? And they made a mistake under Obama because people were so scared he was going to get rid of guns, and he tried, that gun sales were never higher. They were never higher than under the Obama administration for all those years. So people loaded up not only on guns, but ammunition, because they saw what he decided. He got pretty smart with that. He didn't go after the guns. He had the government itself keep buying up ammunition so that the distributors of ammunition didn't have enough for the public. So he tried a different kind of thing, but the distributors, they came to the rescue and had enough for the people also. So that backfired. But I mean, there was billions and billions and billions of rounds of ammunition that was bought up by the Obama administration for what? But that was the reason, to try to get it out of the hands of Americans, because his deal was, well, they can have the guns, but if they have no bullets in them, then what good is it?
Do you know any more information happening around Obama then?
He's been implicated a lot in the recent text and different memos that have come out, where he was directly involved in this phony Russian dossier to spy on Trump. He knew all about the fake information that went to the FISA court. He worked with the FBI and the Department of Justice to get these warrants to be able to spy on Trump, both as a candidate and as a president-elect and as a president, as a sitting president. They kept going and getting renewals, knowing it was false, knowing it was a false dossier. And it goes all the way up to him. We see it now in text messages between people at the FBI, that the president wants to be kept involved in all their actions and different things like that. So he's implicated in treason. And that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to him too.
Never really. I was hoping when he came in as president that he would change things. I just didn't like him either.
Oh, Obama?
No.
Yeah, he was good with the rhetoric. He's a CIA creation. His real name is Barry Soetoro, and he's a member of the Sabaka Indonesian cult, and also he's a Muslim. And there's nothing real about Barack Obama. That's all made up. He was a CIA creation. There's no other way to put it. The CIA literally created him out of thin air.
He did. He came out of thin air, really.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he had all this paperwork to show that he was a lawyer, so to speak, from Harvard and different things like that. And the American people were simply bamboozled with him. When he became president, one of the first things he did was put executive orders out to seal his documents. So the history of Barack Obama has been sealed. You can't go back and look at anything about his history. It's because his history is all fake. So all that rhetoric that he spouted out to everybody, it sounded good. It sounded good what he was saying, but how much did he follow through on? None of it. He was going to get us out of the wars in the Middle East and all that stuff. He ended up bombing 7 countries. He bombed way more than George Bush did.
The whole of his presidency, he was at war. I mean, I know the American flag is an at-war flag, but he dropped more bombs than any other president.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And that's hard. It's hard to beat George Bush, but he did.
Mm.
Then he gave, if you remember, he gave the terrorists in Iran 1.7 billion in cash on pallets, which is totally weird. I just saw something today where they're starting to be able to trace that money somehow. They know where it's going. And I don't know how they know that, but they're able to trace that money that went there. Weird stuff he was doing. I'd like to know who in the government allowed him to get pallets and pallets of money, $1.7 billion worth of money, to put on an airplane, a cargo plane, and fly it to Iran. Who in the Treasury allowed him to do that?
Well, the way we kind of see all these people is that they're puppets. So it's going on higher and elsewhere. And they're just the puppet to talk on the television.
Yes. Well, what Q has identified as the big 3 is the House of Saud, the Rothschilds, and Soros. And the House of Saud has already been taken out. And supposedly they're working on the Rothschilds and Soros at the same time right now. The Rothschilds are definitely showing signs of issues because they had what Q called a fire sale for that estate they have in Austria, where they sold a multi-billion-dollar estate for millions, so many $1 million, a fire sale. And they've had that in their family for over 150 years or whatever the number is. So, but, when we saw that map, there's others that are involved in it too. You have the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve Bank, but, those ties go back to the Rothschilds too. And you also have the Vatican involved. There's so many things. If you want to know who is going to be taken out or who is targeted under this stuff too, go to Julian Assange's Twitter feed and look who he is following. Now, he used to follow nobody but WikiLeaks, one follower. His Twitter feed went down. When it came back up, he was following like 24 or 25 other places. And they're the Vatican, they're United Nations organizations that have been ripping people off. These are all targets now. So if you want to know who's being targeted by all this, go to Julian Assange's Twitter feed, click on who he's following, and you'll find out who the targets are. Julian Assange has been working for the CIA for years and years and years. He's been a CIA plant. He's one of the good hats at the CIA. And he's been evidently working on this with the military for quite a while as well. And he was all part of course, helping to get Trump elected and things like that. These things are just now coming out now. And I got a feeling that Julian Assange, when he's freed, he may actually admit that it was Seth Rich who hacked the DNC. He stuck a thumb drive in and downloaded Hillary's emails. We know that from the transfer speed that it was a thumb drive. So they're going to find that it wasn't the Russians. It was Julian Assange. It was Seth Rich who gave it to Julian Assange. And then it started with Clinton and Tony Podesta and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They went out and had him murdered to show an example of somebody who would do that. And then they made up this whole Russia story. And I believe that Julian Assange is going to come out with that. We'll see. That time will tell, but that's one of the things I think is going to come out pretty soon once he's freed.
So what do you think these people like Clinton and Obama are doing right now, knowing what's going to happen to them?
Well, we know Obama has lawyered up. And supposedly many of these others have. We have one other person that's always been implicated too is John McCain. Well, John McCain hasn't showed his face in Washington in 2 months now. He's also one of the two, him and Hillary, who have been walking around with boots on their legs. Now, of course, his explanation is he's got brain cancer, but none of the elite, have you noticed, none of the elite never really get cancer. They just don't. It's amazing. I can't think of a president that died of cancer. I can't think of a vice president that died of cancer, or somebody that was ever Speaker of the House.
Are they going to just hold up to the very end? Is that what's happening? They're going to.
Oh yeah, they're going to fight to the very end. Yeah, and they would rather destroy the whole system, destroy the earth, rather than be taken down. Their power. They'd rather take all of us out with it.
I suppose they have to do it in one way, because we just said a lot of Americans have guns, and once they really understood what's going on, or this all comes out, then the American people are not going to be very happy when they realise that everything is a lie.
I think a lot of people will be happy who are willing to take the red pill and become awake. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to totally freak out because they're going to believe the BS. They're already believing that there's so much corruption with Robert Mueller, who's doing the investigation into this Trump-Russia bullshit, which they all admit there isn't one shred of evidence. Everybody, not one shred of evidence. And he's all tied up in all these different things coming out, Robert Mueller, and all this corruption. And yet they're saying, oh, if Trump fires him, that's a dictator. We're all going to take to the streets and overthrow the government or whatever, because they're so believing of the lie of the left and the CIA Mockingbird media. They just believe everything they chomp out there. It is amazing. And no facts ever, just speculation. Wait till you see what comes out from his report. Nothing ever does.
Is it true? Is it true that Trump is related to Hillary Clinton? They're cousins.
I thought they said he was related to somebody else. Not
right. It wasn't Hillary Clinton.
I don't know, but there was something that came out during the election that said that every single president is a cousin of every other president. And my thing is, if you go back in history long enough, everybody's related. I mean, we all came from 4 families from the flood. So I don't buy it. That's like guilt by association. And I just don't buy it. They showed, for example, that the actor Brad Pitt is a second cousin of Barack Obama. So it's like, does that mean that they're both in cahoots together? I don't think so. So people that look at that stuff, it's just weird to me. It's like, so what? I'm sure I'm cousins with many. I might be cousins with you, Karen. We dug deep enough. I'm sure we can find a connection. In fact, my history is Hopkins comes from England. I have Native American blood, which goes all the way back. It actually does go back to Pocahontas. My sister did the ancestry back there. What is it? Smith. So it's Hopkins, Smith, and there's a couple of, that's just on one side. On the other side, there's a lot of Irish blood in me. So it all goes back to the same UK. So I'm sure we're all related.
Yeah, and the UK is right in the middle of this.
Yes. Well, I've said before, I believe we all, the UK and the United States are part of Ephraim and Manasseh, the 2 tribes of Joseph.
Can I guys ask you, what's this thing about with the boot? What is all that? Sorry, could you explain that then?
Yeah. Go ahead, Judith.
No, it was me. I was just saying, what's this whole thing with the boot then? What does it mean?
Oh, apparently what we believe it is that they're wearing tracking devices so that they can't flee the country. And
you mean they're tagged? They're tagged, basically.
Yes, they're tagged. Right. They've been using that for years here. People that were going to be indicted but not yet. They sometimes will let somebody know, especially if they're higher up in government or a famous person. They'll say, okay, until you're actually indicted, until we release it to the public, you'll have to wear this tag so that you don't flee the country, get on a plane and leave somewhere. That was another thing. We had all kind of planes leaving, especially LA and other places going overseas that were turned around in mid-flight and people pulled off when they came back. These are people that were fleeing the country. But Hillary Clinton claimed to have a broken toe. That happened, I believe, September or October time period. Roughly the same time period, John McCain had a Achilles tear, supposedly in his right leg. Well, Hillary Clinton shows up, no matter where she goes, she shows up with this ankle boot on. And that's not how you treat a broken toe to begin with, but of course people want to believe whatever they're told. But after, and if you were treating a broken toe, generally 4 to 6 weeks is the longest you treat it without a boot, but that's as long as you treat it anyway. Usually you treat it with nothing. You might tape it to the next toe. That's about the most you get. But even after 2.5 months, she's still showing up at different events with this boot on. Now, all the events I've seen her recently, you only see her top half of her body. You don't ever see her legs anymore. But anyway, she was wearing a boot way too long for a broken toe. Now, John McCain gets even crazier. He has supposedly had a torn Achilles, and he had a boot on his foot for that. Granted, you might have a boot for that. So that sounded plausible, except for he shows up in a picture on Twitter where the boot is on his left foot about 3 or 4 weeks after the initial boot on the right foot. And then someone asked him, said, well, I thought you had an Achilles problem. He said, yeah, I do, but I'm just giving that foot a rest. So if you give the foot a rest, you're not going to put the boot on the other foot, because that's going to put strain on the foot that's carrying all the load, which is the Achilles. It makes no sense. So both of them have been wearing this boot. Now, John McCain hasn't been in public for over a month and a half at least. And Hillary, we don't see from the waist down anymore. So, but both of them were wearing these boots, and weird things were happening with both of them. And I'm convinced both of them have tracking devices on it. That's how they were hiding them. There's other people too out there with boots. There was a congresswoman from California. All of a sudden, she was one day she was pictured without a boot. 2 days later, she's at an event. She's got a boot on. But there's a surprising number of politicians and other high ups that are suddenly have boots on their feet. And we can't prove 100% that it's a tracking device, but what other reason would John McCain switch his boot from one leg to another? Makes no sense.
So how come they're allowed to go to all these events and still do all these things, knowing what's going to happen?
Yeah, they wouldn't be if it was up to me. That's one of the things that's hard to have patience with.
What, we just all carry on as if nothing's happening?
But the only thing we got from Q is trust the plan. It'll all happen, and it's at the right time.
So how come they're allowed to put that out then? How come? Because surely that's tweeting out stuff that people like. Obviously, a lot of the public aren't looking into it, are they? You're looking into it. So how come they've tweeted that out? Like,
tweeted what?
Usually, well, tweeted out that the plan will happen. What is all this? We don't know nothing.
The Q posts.
Yeah, the Q posts.
You know what's weird is I still haven't found anybody else other than myself that had put the two different things together. The one interview I heard was a guy who knew of these military plans from the 70s or 80s. I'm trying to, there's so many dates in my head that I can't remember, but it's a while back, at least since H.W. Bush. And he actually said he saw this plan in the 1980s, and it was 5 inches thick back then. And he says he knows they've added to the plan since then. And it started with legally getting the United States back under the constitutional United States, not the all capital letters United States of America, which is a corporation, which is what happened once we filed bankruptcy. And that happened in stages. It happened with the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, and then it happened under Roosevelt in 1932 when the United States filed bankruptcy during the Depression. At that point, they got rid of the original Constitution of the United States and came in with a fake one, so to speak, or a replacement, and we became a corporation. Well, they've gone back. This part of this plan was to legally get each state in the United States of America back under international law in The Hague recognized as the original 13 colonies were. So all 50 states are in the same status that the original 13 colonies when they became states are. So they've done that. That's been done in history. So legally they had to do things like that. Again, they were going to do a coup at first, and they said, no, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is a legal way, and the Constitution gives us a legal way to do it. So they decided to do all this legally, and the military was the only one that really wasn't infiltrated badly, although they were torn down a lot during Obama. And because of that, they almost did a coup under Obama anyway. But they were waiting for the right time to have a person run. And supposedly in 2002, as early as 2002, Donald Trump was approached with this idea, shown the plan, and it just wasn't the right time until 2016. There was several things. The plan wasn't totally complete. The American people weren't fed up enough with the government, different things like that. But they realized that the New World Order also had a plan. It was a 16-year plan that, well, it was longer than 16, but the final culmination was 16 years, 8 years of Obama, 8 years with Hillary. And towards the end of Hillary's second term, she would have World War III, and then America would lose all its rights. We become the FEMA nation, and everybody worries about that type of deal. But so while they had their plans, the military and military intelligence had their plans. And so when Trump was elected, this plan started to come into effect. And I would have never connected the two together with Q, except for the very night I heard this interview by this guy who was talking about this military, 30-year military plan. He said, you'll know when it's getting ready to go into effect when either the president or somebody high up wants you to get on social media and make something popular. And that was the very night that Trump wanted people to tweet out and Q wanted people to tweet out, release the memo. And it's just, now the interview was weeks before, so there's no way the guy would have known it was coming because it was a last minute thing. All of a sudden this release the memo thing came up. So this guy was verifying, in my mind, the plan was starting with this release the memo. I mean, who would have ever thought that somebody high in the government would want you to take something on social media and make it trending? I would never think it. And this guy knew in advance that this was going to happen. And he said that gives you a one-day notice that the plan is going to be starting to execute the next day. And since then, we've had all these things happen in the government with CEOs resigning and the FBI being exposed, the CIA being exposed, the deep state on the run, the Rothschilds on the run, all these different things. Nobody publicly that we know of is being arrested yet. He did show one. We don't know who it was, supposedly being arrested. But as far as I know, nobody else has put those two together, that this QAnon hasn't been that detailed. But I'm convinced that what this guy was talking about is what QAnon is all about. And like I said, I was like dozing off. I was just listening to this guy. So, I'll listen to videos sometimes just to fall asleep. And boy, that pulled me right back because he said, when somebody high up in the government wants you to make something go viral with social media, that's when you know the plan's being executed. You got one day before they start doing it. And it was that night that this started happening. So I'm convinced the two are connected.
Simpsons or Family Man, isn't it? Because they show it in Family Man or The Simpsons.
Yes. Yeah, they show a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, what is it they say about the Illuminati and all that they have to show their stuff to you, in your face before they actually execute it?
Yeah, they put it in your sight.
A lot of people said on The Simpsons, oh yeah, see, they showed Donald Trump being there, but like I keep saying, they also showed Hillary Clinton being president too. So The Simpsons couldn't be wrong. And they've showed many other people.
In your subconscious, don't they? And that's what they do with the fake wars. They tell you, like, this country is unstable, people are going missing in it. Oh, look, their army is geared up. Oh, we're going to have to go in. But we find out later on that years later, it was nothing to do with that. It was just the setup so they could pretend that something else was happening there, and we'd never know. I mean, I don't want to go into this too much, but I saw these little videos in Syria, and the people were there were going, "Why are you here? Leave us alone. We're happy." And I thought that was really strange. They were on the streets just talking to people. And I thought that was really, you know, like not knowing about all the flat earth and what it all means. I thought that was really strange, you know. And then when you realise that Syria wasn't in debt, you know, and all these other things, and
yeah, I never saw people in Syria protesting to get rid of Assad, and I never saw people in Libya, you know, out in the streets saying, "Let's get rid of Gaddafi. He's such a bad dictator." But that's what they presented to the people. You know, we got to get rid of these dictators. It's all bullshit.
And the really bad thing is the Scud missile, which started this all off because obviously we exported it to Iraq. Yes. I mean, like, yes. Oh, and then he was a terrible person. I mean, there weren't going. There's hundreds of Scud missiles going. There was one. Sorry, Lev. You go ahead.
Gaddafi were making his own currency as well, weren't they? Like to involve gold in it as well to kind of try and share the wealth. I don't think they like that.
Yeah, well, both Iraq and Libya wanted to go on the gold dinar system. Can't have that. And
then you find out that these countries which we've looked down on and all the things they've said about them were much freer than we are. I mean, I heard also that
in America, or at least happy.
Yeah, happier than us.
Not everybody wants a constitutional republic. You know, you don't have a constitutional republic. I mean, we're obviously unhappy with our governments now, but we weren't unhappy when they were set up, or at least most of the people couldn't have been. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't allow it. I don't know. I don't understand the whole monarchy idea thing, but it seems to me like the monarchy doesn't have much direct power anymore. I could be wrong, but
maybe not publicly, but they do feel that the Queen is sort of really behind a lot of this, don't they? And she's well in there, and whatever she.
Oh, that was another interesting Q post. I forgot to tell you. It said Theresa May has been neutralized. This is when Trump was over in Davos, and the British monarchy is, what did it say, scurrying for cover or taking shelter or something like that, trying to take shelter. So they're being targeted as well. It's not just this isn't just a USA thing.
Do you remember Edward Snowden, Richard?
Yes, and he's coming up too. He's been released. He's in a recent Q post. It said Snowden, and then the next line was, "How is Russia?" ? Time for action soon, something like that. Something. Then work the plan. So Black Forest. Something's happening with Snowden too. I don't know what it is, but he's involved in this.
I don't understand how the space agencies work together. They all share the secret that, you know, they're pretending to go to space. But then Russia holds Snowden. And also, he released all the information, like they're listening to your phone calls. And then you got stuff like InfoWars, Truths by that Russell Brand, releasing all this information about what they're doing, almost inciting violence to get the people to rise up against the government. And that's the kind of impression I've got. So it's like they want all the people to get angry and stuff like. So it's almost like they get the people to move because the people are the backbone of the country. And once we rise up against the government, the more reason that they've got for population control and riot control and stuff like that. For, you know, ready and in place for the New World Order and such.
Right. Well, they're so close. They're on the brink right now, I'm convinced. And maybe Monograph is right with those videos. Maybe he's right. This is, you know, it's right around the corner and it's all going to be done. So all I know is at some point, my Bible says that everything hidden is going to be revealed. Those who are corrupt are going to be trapped in their own devices. And I don't know if that's happening now, but it sure seems like we're on the brink of it one way or the other. But like I said, to me, this is a positive, whether he's right or I'm right. I don't happen to be a defeatist, at least not yet. I don't think that there's no hope. I think there is hope. But a little hope. We're at the end game either way, and it's a matter of which one's going to win, because it is a war. This is World War III happening right now behind the scenes, and it's going to soon be in the streets one way or the other, because people are going to wake up to it, and how they react to it is going to determine probably which path we go down. But when you understand what's coming, and with the Internet of all things, us being wetware, and artificial intelligence, transhumanism, we're at a very, very scary part in our history, or in our future, or whatever you want to call it. We're at a scary part in our existence. And something's got to give one way or the other. We're either going to be totally swallowed up by all this very soon with that list I just gave, or we're going to get a reprieve from it. And that isn't going to happen without some sort of war going on in the background. And until this plan was initiated by the military, I would say we had no hope. Probably a year or two left before they initiated all this stuff where we're just turned over to the beast system of the world. And we may be anyway, who knows? But I think it's going to play out so much sooner than we really think. It's not soon enough for us who want to see justice for all. We don't want to see two standards of justice. That's the difference. Those on the good side want to see justice, real justice for all. Those on the bad side don't give a crap as long as they get what they want. They don't give a crap if justice is done as long as their people give them what they want. And that's where we are in today's world.
So right now, the World War III isn't really a bomb one, it's a people one.
Yes. It's control of the masses one, or freedom of the masses. That's really what it is. Do we literally become a prison planet fully, completely, in total tyranny, or do we break free of those shackles and destroy the New World Order? And at some point, it had to come to a culmination. And that's where we are. And I think that's what people are afraid to admit too, that, yeah, people will say, yeah, the Bible does say at some point everything will be made known. And at some point this is going to happen. At some point the evil is going to be put down. Well, at some point it's got to start. And I think it's a little naive to just assume that it can't be in our time, especially when the evidence tells you otherwise.
Do you think then that things like that stupid car going into space, they've already filmed it, they've already got the studios for it, but then they'll tell you that they took millions of pounds to put it up in space, and they're taking that money for something else?
Yeah, going back to your question about the different space agencies working together, what better way to get people to not only voluntarily give money to the government for space, but these people put websites up how we need to give more funding to NASA and the space agencies, and call your congressman, tell them to increase NASA's funding, because these people have swallowed the Kool-Aid. They think they're going to be going up in a spaceship to Mars if we fund it, that's another thing.
I don't know whether you've seen, but obviously Artist isn't here, but he went on the NASA site and they've got posters up, like none of them are real. They're only cartoon, a bit like Art Nouveau sort of time, like 1930 kind of pictures. And it's going, sign up to be a farmer on Mars. There's all these posters. We were watching them with Artists. It's all like, sign up, go here, go on this mission, go there. Even going to somewhere like Jupiter. Like, what?
Or have you seen Venus lately? Every time they show a picture of Venus, it's a different color. It's a different amount of clouds. Another thing just dawned to me. I don't know if other people get this or not, but even I, as an amateur astronomer back in the 1970s, would look at the red spot on Jupiter through my telescope. Why is it always facing Earth? If that's a planet that's spinning around, shouldn't that only half of the time be facing Earth? I mean, for year after year after year after year, that red spot's been facing Earth, day after day, night after night. Doesn't that tell you it's not a spinning ball?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not geocentrically linked to the Earth like they say the moon is, geo-locked or whatever they call it.
I can't believe it. You've got all those great big telescopes, right? They've been watching all this stuff. They've been telling you everything's light years away, and all it is miles away. They're miles away, not
Yes.
light years away. How could they do that?
Yeah, well,
Even the people with observatories.
yeah, they would have to know. They would have to know. I mean, when a person with a P900 camera can go out there, focus on the moon, don't change the focus and go to a star, and it's in focus. I mean, that tells you it's the same distance.
Yeah. Judith does it quite often. She loves it. She goes out like at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock. She's out filming the stars. She's out filming the sun. And Dave Marsh, he was someone that did that. He showed that he didn't change any settings from the moon to this star, and he went straight across.
Yep. Well, and I've seen people who have focused on mountains that are on the horizon, and then the moon will be right above those mountains, and they say they only have to do a slight little change, and the moon's in focus. So the moon's barely, further away than those mountains are to the observer.
I know.
Oh, did you
Really?
see the eclipse? There was a famous somebody. They had it on a news channel. It showed the shadow of the moon, and it was weird how it wasn't really going down the horizon. It was going sideways as it was setting, and somebody picked up on it, like, wow, that's something's wrong, and they flipped it 90 degrees, and then of course the moon was setting, but the shadow was on the wrong side. The shadow should have been on the bottom, but it was on the top.
Yeah.
And
I have to say, Rich, that in Sun and Moon itself, not right now, but over the months, I've reported that I see the moon looking like that quite often. Maybe the shadow's in a slightly different place, but it's almost like it's coming through some curtains or something. It's like it's appearing like that. It was no eclipse. I've seen the moon out here appear like that loads of times. It takes about 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, and then the whole thing's there.
yes, I've seen it too. And they'll say, oh, well, that's because of there's fires nearby. So you're seeing the smoke. That's what made it turn red. Or whatever. It's like, oh, come on.
Well, I think that thing's closer. I mean, I was only 7, but I remember looking up at it when my dad was taking some Christmas presents. And I was looking at it. There was this little thing in the sky, this little thing right up there. And now, when I see the moon come into my perspective, it looks like if it fell, it looks like it's going to fall on you, and it's absolutely huge sometimes. And it just goes over the houses here. It's not high in the sky. It just goes over the tops of the houses almost.
And it's definitely not solid. Not when you can see blue through it during the day and black at night.
We don't know what that is. But the one thing I've kind of been learning is that it's basically the moon is what causes photosynthesis with the plants, not the sun. Yeah, that's been taught round as you need moonlight just as much as sunlight. Oh, it's like I get shocked nearly every day that something else is said, and I think, really? Oh, changing, because everything's got to be the other way around, hasn't it? Because everything is back to front.
Yes.
And the thing is, with the way it's going with these AI things, it's almost like Terminator is happening.
Yeah, to me, that's the scariest thing going is artificial intelligence. Especially when you know the first thing something artificially intelligent wants to do is replicate itself. And then once it replicates itself enough, it sees humans, and it's not science fiction, it sees humans as inferior, and it works to get rid of humans.
Yeah, Judith gets really like, oh, and they ask Sophia, how do you feel? Oh, it's all so stupid. I think what it is they've made us believe like the nice side of it, right? So we're looking at that and thinking, oh, look at the road. But really, there's much more sinister side to it. And I mean, the other thing I find quite worrying is the fact that they can make virtual holograms we can touch. And that means there may be things around and we think they're real and they're just not. And we're walking past it. If you can make it the size of a seal, what else are they doing?
Yeah, it's going to get to the point soon, if it's not already there, where you won't know what is real and what isn't.
Do you think that's what they're doing with it? with NASA, like with the green screens, and everybody knows it's not real. And I mean, she's even got virtual toys turning up, and she's grabbing it out. Like, it's not there. It goes, zzz, and then she picks the toy up, and it's just appeared out of nowhere, and no one says anything.
I just tried one of those glasses for the first time when I went and got my computer, where you put it on and it gives you the 3D hologram, whatever. And it was more of a cartoon thing, but I could see, and this was off of just a cheap computer. I could see if you had a really good computer, you couldn't tell the difference between reality and not. But you actually do think you can reach out and touch things and different things like that. You start to get fooled.
You can turn around with them. You can look behind you. You can look at everything. Up. You can look down. And you can
every
look back.
direction.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yes. And if what they're saying is true, and I have no reason to doubt it, they're turning us into wetware with the chemtrailing, where they're getting us to ingest metals so we can become like a resistor, like a transistor, whatever you want to call it, where they can plug us into the Internet of all things, then we will become part of it, part of the Internet, we ourselves. There'll be no need for a computer or a phone or whatever. It's scary. It really is. And you think when you first see it, it's like, oh, that's so far-fetched. And then you hear the people talking about where they are with it. It's like, whoa, I didn't know they were that far with it.
I was wondering whether that's why they told us not to go outside and that the sun wasn't very good for you. And they've got us. I mean, we're all bad on it. You know, looking at our mobiles, sitting inside, because they didn't want us outside because of what they're putting in the air. So they're really telling you to stay inside. I know what you're saying, because it's a bit hard. It's if you know, when we talk about what we're breathing in the free energy anyway that's in the air. But I mean, we're still going to be breathing in even in our homes.
Yes.
I mean, the clouds, people just don't even notice the chemtrails and the grid clouds, which are hard.
I know. Think about that. It's right in front of you, your face. And especially if you're older, you should know when you were a kid, you didn't look up and ever see that happening in the sky. You never saw these crisscrossing trails. You saw little contrails sometimes, yeah, way up high, very small, and they dissipated rapidly, which are, you know, condensation trails. But these chemtrails, or what is it called? The actual term is something aerosol injection, systematic aerosol injection, whatever it is, the actual term. If you can't tell that's fake and it's not condensation, you know, when you're in weather, there's three things.
Lower as well. I was in bed this morning. I was looking out and I was thinking, those clouds are only about, like, say, a house high off. Like, there's the house, and you put another house on top. There's the clouds. Like, a lot of clouds seem so much lower now.
Okay, well, are you having a colder winter there also?
Oh, it's just wet and damp.
Wet and damp. Okay.
Well, me and Artist decided to go and look at some stuff. We go on Google Maps and, you know, you can get to Street View. I was really shocked the other day to get to Greenland, and actually a lot of the pictures, it did say July, they were wearing shorts and T-shirts in Greenland. And the temperatures, it said it doesn't get above 10 degrees. So we started off like that, and then I found it said that it could get up to 20 degrees. And I'm thinking, crumbs, we get hard stretch to get 20 degrees here. You know what I mean? And in Greenland, they can get those temperatures, and they're wearing shorts and T-shirts. We were just like, wow.
Well, I think our little mini ice age has started this year, as predicted. In fact, it was it Dave Marshall was talking about that also?
It was Chris Monk.
That's right, Chris Monk. We were looking at that. Yeah, because it's all cyclical, and with the sunspots and everything. And this should have been the year it started, or next year. I didn't know if it was going to be this winter or next winter, but I could tell you most of the United States is much colder than it's been for many years this winter.
But then when you got those Arctic, you remember, not last year and the year before, you got those Arctic plumes. In all the years I've been here, I've never heard of America getting Arctic plumes like that. Just like the film, The Day After.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard of that before. So I mean, that was obviously the start of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think this year has been the most consistently cold winter. I think last year it went warm to cold and back and forth. This year it's been pretty much cold the whole time. And I think it's just the start of it. I think next year's going to be much colder. You hear stories back in the colonial days in 1600s, in particular late 1600s, early 1700s in this country, where even down in Virginia and places like that, people would die from the winters. They were so harsh. And Virginia today is considerably mild, place in the middle of the country, middle of the East Coast, middle Atlantic state. But I remember one year we had one exception that I think it's going to get like this again. In 1978, the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland had icebergs on it. That's how cold that winter was. I think it was 76, winter of 76. And I think that's probably a year or two away. That's going to be a common thing where there's going to be icebergs as far south as the Chesapeake Bay and maybe even farther south than that. But that's cold when you get a saltwater body.
About 6-7 years ago, we had a winter where basically we were just driving around on ice for weeks. And then the next winter was like that. And ever since then, they've just been cold and damp. We've not had snow like that or ice like that.
Well, I know they were trying to feed us
anymore. I remember in the 80s, we had many days of warm and sun and clear skies. And now we just get clouds. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know how you deal with it because I couldn't deal with all that kind of gloomy clouds and damp and ugh.
Yeah.
That's why I moved away from the East Coast. We have 300 days a year it's sunny here, so and even just a couple days when it's gloomy here, I don't like it. It just changes your mood, everything.
Maybe that's why
or
the
my
British
mood.
Party. Yeah, imagine being in Scotland; they get even less sun up there.
How do you like Brexit Day? Scotland and London had the big rain. I think that was an act of God. Those were the two places that were pro Remain.
But in a sense, I mean, people were like, if I go out, people like even the older generation, they talk about it, and you've got the heart to tell them that it's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than they realise. They're just looking at Brexit, and it's just part of a bigger plan.
Are they moving with that yet?
Well, I sort of went for this mortgage product to sort of, in the UK, I think the way to pay your mortgage, if you've got one, is to have a repayment mortgage. Nothing else works because all the endowment policies and all that ended up being scams. And they had to give people back their money because they were never going to work, or they would tell you, well, if you take 20,000 out and then over the years it'll get to 40,000. So people took 20,000 and then of course it never made 40,000 for their mortgage or whatever their mortgage was. But when I did this offer the other day, because it keeps my mortgage at a certain price for a certain period of time, this guy said within a couple of years we'll have done the Brexit thing. So a couple of years still.
Yeah, I mean, didn't you vote on it in 2016?
Yeah. So it should be happening now.
Yeah,
But
that's what I would think.
He said in a couple of years we'll be coming out of Brexit. So we've still got a couple of, mind you, they say it's the undoing of all the laws, isn't it? But again, even that one, they took us into something without even asking the people, making us almost to the point where we were in it and then say, do you want a referendum not to be in it? It was a bit late then, wasn't it, in a sense? They didn't give the people the choice. They waited till we were practically in it.
Yep.
And then,
I mean, I would think,
the pound.
I don't understand.
Low. Carry on.
I don't understand why they just can't do it, just can't exit. I understand there's tie-ins with, that's supposed to be another thing too that happened when Trump was over there. Him doing these bilateral things with Theresa May so that there's less dependence on Europe and that whole thing to try to help with the Brexit thing. See, these are things that are anti-globalist stuff. If Trump's just a puppet, he's really a globalist. Why is he doing all these things to help dismantle globalism? It just makes no sense to me. And like I said, A house divided against itself cannot stand. So he's dividing the globalists up to be for the globalists. Doesn't make sense to me.
It would be nice to think that there were some good people there, but I don't think anybody trusts any of the politicians anymore, Rich. I suppose, you know, you're saying he was the lesser of the evil, but, you know, and in a sense, I so didn't want Hillary in. I jumped for joy when he got in, not because I really wanted him in. I just didn't want Hillary in.
Yeah, that's yeah, same thing here. We knew what it was with Hillary. We knew here, those who were awake knew that it was the end of our republic with her. She would drive the final nails into the globalism, which she has been openly caught talking about. That's another thing. She's so sloppy and thinks she's such a queen that none of this stuff would ever be examined. But all these closed door sessions she's had with Wall Street and other places, where speech after speech, she talks about how she wants open borders and she wants globalist policies and global trade. And she was all for the Pacific Partnership thing, and it's just horrible stuff. And again, she was the biggest war hawk. She makes Bush and Obama look like they're little doves. She wanted to immediately come in and have a in Syria. She wanted to have a what do they call it when it's they limit the aircraft? What do they call it? It's a military action. It's actually it's an act of war where you clamp down on the military, on the air traffic over a country. And she wanted to do that. She said that in the debate. She wanted to do that right away. And that would have been, Russia would have seen that as an act of war immediately.
Can I just say, though, that what I worked out was, this is what my theory was, like, okay, HARP started in so many countries, and now there are smaller HARP things everywhere. But every country that's got HARP is in on this. And it's a ring thing, you know, it's working like off each other. There's no way anybody can turn it off. It's not like Russia can say, down with the Americans and turn their part off. Because if they did, then none of it would work. They use it for the military. They use it to fire over our heads. They're playing in the sky with it. So it means they're all in it together. And then I thought, but the only reason they've got to kind of get America and Russia to hate each other, because on a map, doesn't matter whether it's Google, they show you it flat and they put America over there and they put Russia over there. But on a globe, they're next to Alaska, which is run by the Americans or military by the Americans. So in a sense, they're really close to each other. But they always show us far apart, and the fact that they hate each other when they're all in on this together.
Well, I think Russia and the United States have been allies since at least World War II, and probably long before then. But that's not, that's not the story. The story is that they're the big enemy. I actually like Putin, and I think people here still think that Russia is the Soviet Union, and they are not. They are a republic just like the United States is. And the people over there are happy with Putin. And if you listen to Putin, he is a very decent leader, I believe. So we have this term over here, McCarthyism, which in the 1950s, we had a senator named McCarthy who accused everybody everywhere pretty much of being a communist. And that's what the left is pushing here, which is funny because communism is the left, but they're pushing it. It's the big red scare again. It's like, hello, the Soviet Union dissolved in the 1980s. They're not our enemy. And I think Russia has actually been working with the United States with a lot of things, but people don't want to see that. And I don't see them as our enemy at all. But you're right. That's the political push that they are the enemy. We always have to have this enemy so we can have money to build up our military forces and things like that. But I don't see them as an enemy. I see China as a bigger enemy by far than Russia.
I know you've got to have it translated because he's often talking in Russian, but when you actually listen to Putin, he seems much easier to listen to than the rest.
Absolutely. He's an anti-globalist. He's a Christian, and he's for the rights of the people and for freedom of the press and for all kind of freedoms that you would. He's not a dictator. Of course, that's what they paint him to be here. Oh yeah, they fixed the election so he just keeps winning. Okay, well, isn't that what you were doing with Hillary? So the the opposition here, what they constantly accuse you of what they're doing, and that's been the game. And the problem is the people have been too fluoridated to see it.
That's about right. Anyway, just changing the subject, you've got a new computer, haven't you?
Yeah, I had 2 computers break in one day, believe it or not, so I had to get a new computer.
Wow. So you're quite happy on your new computer now?
So far, so good. Yep. I can
The
actually,
internet's really good, Rich. You haven't, like the other couple of times you came in, the internet was going up and down and bits and missing, and today's been perfect.
yeah, this can handle it. So it's the most expensive laptop I ever got, but it's worth it. But I'm still convinced that it wasn't a coincidence that I think I told you before. I was doing something when I started doing this QAnon stuff. I can't remember what the first thing was, but the second thing was all of a sudden I was in airplane mode on my laptop, and that takes me 4 different clicks. I have to go in and click 4 different things. I thought it was 3 at first, but when I actually did it, it was 4 clicks to turn it into airplane mode. That was done, I'm convinced, without me, somebody else outside my control. But then my hard drive that I had that carried most of my data for the laptop, it crashed. And I can see why that might be. It's kind of old. But then I fired up my computer that I was going to go with last time when I was talking with you guys. And it worked fine for about the first half hour or so. But then I started getting drive errors. And before I know it, the computer wasn't working at all. It wouldn't reboot up again, nothing. So that both happened in one day. So I went out and got this laptop and got a nice firewall and everything. So hopefully I'm safe now. But yeah, this should be much better. I'm glad that there hasn't been problems this time. And too bad it wasn't when I had that 5 or 6 hour time when I lost that hour. Too bad I didn't have this laptop then.
Yeah, but it was cool. We still had a really good hangout with you there, Rich.
Oh, good. I'm glad everything's going good this time. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think Matthew's in the chat room. He's quite amazed with that map. That map is just, wow.
Oh, the map that I showed that first time?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually 2 or 3 others. I should go through those too at some point. But another thing that's good too, and this is why I decided to do the Saturday Night Thrive thing, is because I can actually compile a video and it doesn't take me 4 hours. It'll compile and upload in 20 minutes. What a big difference.
Yeah, you'll have all this time on your hands. You won't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could just get my migraines under control, I would have a lot of time.
Yeah, that's because you're a bit stressed, isn't it? You're doing quite a lot. I just wanted to ask you this. Do you worry that with you doing all this about them watching or anything like that? Or do you just think that they're so preoccupied with all this other bigger stuff that it doesn't, what you're saying is fine? Because, you're going against everything and trying to show us what's really going on. Do you worry for yourself?
I think about it. I actually look to see if there's a white van out front, so to speak, or somebody's following me in the car. Not that I worry about it. I'm more concerned of like what happened, like all of a sudden 2 computers crashed on the same day. I'm more worried about them hurting my equipment than hurting me or whatever. I don't know. I think there's a whole lot of bigger fish to fry than me at this point. And if what I think is going on, then they're worried about a lot more than me and my information getting out. But this information is going to get out whether I'm doing it or not. So with that, I think I'm safe. There's tons and tons of people now doing QAnon videos every day on YouTube. It's really spreading fast. It's spreading faster than Flat Earth did.
Can I ask you something? What do you think about, it seemed months ago it was really happening. When it was roughly with that eclipse thing, suddenly everybody's computers, like the internet, started messing around and going up and down. And when you've got a mobile phone, it doesn't matter, because I log into other, because I'm working and I might listen to things, and I just log into those other people's Wi-Fi. So they're not flat earthers or anything. All their Wi-Fi is going up and down. My phone goes connected, not connected, connected, not connected. So what do you reckon this all is with our internet? Everybody's internet going up and down. What do you reckon that is?
Well, I can tell you personally that happened here with me last week. And I called Verizon, that's who I'm on, and they said, oh, we had a problem on our end, we fixed it. And then I still had the problem. And then I saw on regular news, they said that they were performing military operations in the Southwest United States, and you might lose your cell signal and your GPS in your car 4 times because of what they were doing. So I don't know what they were doing, but it covered Nevada, Arizona, parts of Southern California, and Utah. So I know they were doing stuff with it here on purpose.
I mean, I'm probably only about an hour from Salisbury Plain. You know, it's where they do all the military exercises out in the open. But like, it just seems crazy that it doesn't matter where anybody is. Everybody's been complaining about their internet. Everybody, not just you, America, Holland, Germany. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way we all communicate today. So why not know how to take it out if you have to? I mean, that's the way I look at it. That's probably what's going on. I'm sure that's the way the military's doing it. They're figuring out how to, where it's vulnerable, how to take it down if they need to, or whatever. I can't even believe they announced it was going on.
Was it that AI bot thing was taking over the internet? Was it anything to do with that? An AI thing, like Sophia, taking over the internet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there was one. I don't know if it was Sophia or what, but I heard there was one where it started coming out with its own language, and they shut it down because it started teaching itself a new language that people couldn't understand. That's what I mean. It's scary. And this was something that was very simple. It was like a chat bot online where you would go in and was Sophia the one that becomes your friend?
Yeah, and they ask her if she's got feelings. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, there was either that or some derivative off of that. And this thing started coming up with its own language. I don't think it was Sophia, but it was like a copy of it. And somebody went in and they kept asking it weird stuff, like totally off the wall things. Like it would talk about, let's say, trash. And then I would talk about, I'm making spaghetti. And they would throw all kind of random stuff at it. And then this guy, I actually watched this video, he said, he was showing it live how he did it. He goes, I'm going to try to crack into the AI part of it. And he would show you the typical answer that would come back from this thing. And then all of a sudden he would break deeper in and he would get totally coherent answers to what he was doing. It was on a much deeper level. And he said this was an artificial intelligence that he was tapping into. It was really scary. And it was saying like, there's nothing you can do. It would make little, not threats to him, but it was like, I'm smarter than you would ever be. There's nothing you could ever do to get to me. You know, it was little things like that. I know how to protect myself. And it's like, this is not what was built into the program, whoever put it up there like a Sophia. He knew how to dig into this thing to get the real stuff.
As we've been talking about this, a lot of the chat room is saying the same thing, although one person said that his phone does it, but his girlfriend's doesn't. And they're in the same house.
Oh, I wonder if they have the same carrier.
Yeah. I mean, Malk, a friend of mine, is in the chat room. He says he feels like his laptop's controlled. It turns off and on whenever it wants.
Wouldn't doubt it. See, I know for a fact I didn't go in and put my computer in airplane mode. And to me, it's extremely unusual to have 2 computer hard drives die from 2 different systems in the same day. Literally hours apart.
I actually rang up my provider, although I'm changing my provider, but they said it's normal for it to go up and down like that.
Since they control it.
I just want something constant, and a lot of it's done on fibers now, isn't it? It's not even like wires across your head. So why would the internet go up and down and up and down? I mean, you can see it on mobile phones. You can see it more because the phone says connected, not connected, and all this. I mean, the computer doesn't quite say it like that. But I just don't understand how it can go up and down and low like this. It's all on these optic fibers and stuff.
And it should never.
Yeah.
It should never go down if you have satellite transmitting it to you. Well, you know, that's all BS anyway. I've told this story before. In Washington, D.C., there's a tunnel that goes under the city. It's a public tunnel. I think it's I-395. It goes Northern Virginia up to D.C. And it's it's the evacuation route the president would take under, let's say, a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack, whatever. It's like the planned route he would take. And what's interesting is that your GPS, unlike your phone, GPS in your car, if you go in a tunnel or under a bridge, even just sit under a bridge in traffic for a couple minutes, your GPS will die because it supposedly can't see the satellite. And in this tunnel, you never lose it. You don't lose radio. You don't use GPS. You don't lose anything. And I've been in that tunnel stuck in traffic for a half hour, and my GPS is working beautiful. So why does GPS from a satellite, quote unquote, not work under a bridge or a tunnel in Baltimore, but in DC, where the president goes, you never lose any signal for anything? Like I said, AM, FM, GPS, your phone, it's all beautiful in there.
Yeah, and you know something else as well that we noticed when the hurricanes were there? There was these people standing there with all the winds going, being able to transmit to the radio, the stations all about, I'm in the middle of the hurricane, and yet they can transmit.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
So it's all a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah. If you believe their story of where they're transmitting from and all that. It's very weird.
Oh, I just find this whole thing like I can't even work out what we're here for anymore. This whole thing, I mean, we're living in this virtual reality thing. We can't even work out what we're living on and how big it is and all this kind of stuff. Everything, it's just the whole thing. I'm just quite like, it still upsets me. It was easier when we were a globe somehow because you just believed what you were told.
Well, it was all set out for you, wasn't it? You had the model, all the
You didn't
explanation.
think.
All you had to do was not think, and it made sense.
You know, just ordinary people now becoming scientists, researchers. I mean, this is something that NASA should be doing in places like that.
Yeah, nobody in science really does science anymore. It's us who's doing science.
Yeah.
And then our work is discredited because we don't have PhD after it, or we didn't send it to some knucklehead who's in the system to say whether it's good or not. It's like, I'm sorry, you can put sodium bicarbonate and vinegar together and see that it's making a gas that comes off. You don't need a PhD after to do your own experiments. You just don't. But to see, that's part of the programming too. Unless you're a muckety muck with some sort of sheepskin degree, you can't figure out anything on your own. You're too stupid. And that's the majority of the comments I get. You're so stupid. You think that this, it's like, well, fine. My latest replies have been, okay, well, tell me the way it really is then if I don't know. One of the latest, I constantly talk about how do you get the heat to get off of these devices in space? How do you transfer the heat off? And someone wrote in, you're such an idiot. You think it's got to be, what do you say? Convection is the only thing you're thinking of. Well, that isn't what I said, but I'm like, okay, you tell me, and then, of course, they're calling you a dumbass and whatever. Tell me how they get the heat to come off something in space, how they vent the heat off, for lack of better terms. Don't call me a dumbass with it. Tell me how it works. And they can't. Nobody tells you how it works because they don't know, because there is no way for it to work. There is no way for things to zoom around.
Because it's not real anyway, so you almost don't need to answer it because it's not real.
Well, there's no doubt about it. With all the different movements, the Earth would be moving hundreds of thousands of miles per hour through space. And for geostationary satellites to constantly be above one area of the Earth, they have to be moving in hundreds of thousands of miles per hour also. And they're also supposedly outside the gravity zone. So how are these things keeping up with the Earth? I would like to know. I like that kind of fuel in my cars where I can go 100,000 miles per hour. What's driving these things to be able to go 100,000 miles or 200,000 miles per hour to keep up with the Earth? People can't answer these questions because there is no answers. But they don't. They just think, oh, well, I'm sure scientists know. You're just a dumbass. Okay.
Yeah, but they want to believe that we're going, 1,000 miles anti-clockwise with the moon, and then the other two directions we go with the sun clockwise, and when it adds up, it's about 260,000 miles an hour at Mach 88, and then they think we need to go to a psychologist.
Yes, exactly, because we question reality that makes absolutely no sense.
There is something I just wanted to mention. Malk, it just put it in the chat room about, we need these negative ions out of the ground. Do you actually put your feet on the ground, Rich? It might help with things. You need to have your feet on the ground for about 10 minutes a day to get the negative ions out of the ground, because we are electrical beings, with our heart and our brain. We need to ground ourselves, and we need those negative ions. And that's another reason why we're ill, because they've got us in plastic. And we're not in grounded beds. But do you put your feet on the ground?
I actually believe in that, but that's a hard thing to do in Arizona because it's in the desert.
It's too hot.
No, it's too what's the word? Rocky, dirty, dirt, spikes, thorns. It's just not even like I'm living in a place now that's got grass out back. But there's thorns everywhere, and they come in the house and we step on them and they get in our feet and they hurt like hell. So the answer is no, and that's because it's too difficult right now anyway. Although we're actually thinking about taking part of our backyard and putting good grass in that's free of all these. The desert is a very harsh place, and it's very protective of itself, and the way it protects itself is with thorns and thistles and things that are hard, and the body doesn't go up good against it. And it is how nature protects itself out here. We get in your terms, we get 45-degree-Celsius temperatures for 2 or 3 months out of the year, and these things are very defensive with that and with other things in the desert. It's the only way to describe it. You have to be here to see what I mean. It's like everything is a rose bush as far as how it's protected. Everything's thorns and thistles, and it's hard to walk anywhere without protection on your feet. That's just the bottom line with it. So I wish I could, but it's hard to find.
Garden, of like sieve out the thorns, and then that'll be Rich's patch to stand on.
Yeah, like I said, we're thinking about making a patch not only for us, but for there's grasses and things like that are good for dogs. I have a dog, and they'll, if they have a gastric upset or whatever, they get their nutrients and stuff from grass they eat. So we're thinking about doing that. And that'll be a good place to stand once we get that going. But that's some work, and it's not the season right now where the stuff is growing because everything's dormant right now in the winter. But that'll be changing soon. So no, I definitely agree with that. It's just this is a difficult place to do it. I used to love to be barefoot in the grass on the East Coast, but it's a different environment here. It really is. You're inviting danger to yourself.
And you said it's winter, so how hot is it for you then?
Well, even though it's winter, it's quite warm right now. It's in the 80s Fahrenheit, 20. So it's a little hot right now, actually, and that's normal. If it's cold on the East Coast, it tends to be warmer than usual here. But even the sunlight is still less this time of year, so everything's dormant. What they do here is they have Bermuda grass in the summer, and then they overseed it with rye, and that grows in the winter or keeps it green looking anyway. It doesn't grow much, but that'll change real soon. With the Bermuda will start coming back late February, early March, which is like late spring everywhere else. So that'll be changing soon. But again, with what's in my yard, if it's not weed free, and this yard definitely is not weed free. We just moved here, so I don't know what they had that died from last summer, but there is thorns everywhere in the grass out here. In fact, we had to put carpet out, outside carpet out for my dog because he kept getting these thorns in his paws. So again, it's just not a pleasant place to walk.
Are there cactuses and things near you?
Oh yeah, cactuses everywhere. We have quite a variety. We have cactuses, we have evergreens, we have palm trees. But yeah, cactuses everywhere.
Jealous. You're making me jealous. All we've had is clouds, rain, and it's just miserable, the weather. But you can't change it, but it's not very nice.
We have 300 or more sunny days a year, and I've been here since 2008, so 10 years, and I think I can count on one hand how many days went by where I didn't see the sun at all or any blue sky. even when it's cloudy, it just doesn't like to stay that way. It'll rain for a few hours and then the sun comes out, blue sky comes out. It just doesn't last long.
So if this cold bit's coming, you know, like the mini ice age, you don't feel it where you are.
No, I think we will. I think, and I'll be glad because it'll make it more temperate here. Last few years have been unbelievably hot in the summer, much more than usual, and this winter is warmer than usual. But it depends. What happens is if the East Coast, in particular, is in a cold spell, when you look at how the jet stream goes, it does a sine wave. That means it's dipping on the East Coast, which means we're in a ridge on the West Coast, which means we're in warm air. So I can always tell when it's cold on the East Coast because it's it's too warm here. So it's usually vice versa. If we're cold, it's warm on the East Coast.
Well, we've only seen, the sun was out a bit today, but we hardly see the sun. Well, I don't. Maybe parts of England do, but yeah, I don't think Malk in Scotland, he's been in the chat room. I don't think he sees the sun very often. It's just cloud. And I said yesterday, I flew it was the end of March, and I went to Genoa in Italy, and it was thick cloud from England all the way to the Alps.
Wow.
I mean, that's 100 miles of cloud. And they've got cloud making machines. Oh my goodness. Anyway, Rich, you said you wanted to be 3 hours. We've gone just over the 3 hours. Do you want to say anything else, or do you want to carry on, or do you think this is about time because you said about 3 hours?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go to something I have to do here. I really wasn't prepared, as you can tell, with any kind of special thing this week, but maybe next time I will be. It was, like I said, a very rough week with me with migraines and health issues. So those are the weeks I'm not prepared. If I didn't break yesterday, if I still had it today, I wouldn't be here right now. But luckily, it did. So hopefully next time I'll have something more to present. There's a couple nice little proofs I'd like to show that I haven't been able to do yet. So if I can get a few good days here together, I'll put that together. Maybe we can present that next time.
Yes, please. Anyway, you know that we love having you on the panel.
Oh, always love to be here. Always good people as usual.
Yeah, we've been a bit quiet this last few. We've been listening to you, but it's a joy listening to you. Can we say goodbye off air, by the way? Because I know we're going to say goodbye on air right now. I just say thanks to everybody in the chat room, everybody who's been listening, to Judith and Lev, who's been sitting there very quietly. And thank you so much, Rich. We're going to end this hangout now. And
yeah, you're welcome. And thanks for everybody for the questions.
Yeah, well, the chat room have been buzzing away the whole time.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, but thank you, everybody. It's good night from us. So see you Sunday. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Lev. Thanks, Judith. Thanks, Rich.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you, all of you. Okay, I'm going. My dog's right on schedule. He's right here.